Chapter 739. As the most important event in 9 regions in the past 100 years, the grand competition had spawned many duels that were destined to be recorded in history in less than a year. In the opening battle, Xian Mo's yin and yang separation and Hichu Doran's yin and yang incarnation, and later, when the Wanxian League was in decline, Wang Lu's planned counterattack. These were all classic battles that were well known and memorable for countless people. However, compared with today's battle, all the previous battles seemed to be overshadowed. In many people's view, perhaps there would not be such a dramatic battle in 9 regions in the next few hundred years. To some extent, this battle would rewrite the history of 9 regions. Zhu Shiyao versus Tetragon. When Zhu Shiyao stepped onto the field, everyone believed that this was a hopeless battle. However, after the start of the battle, it quickly ushered in an unexpected major turning point. Zhu Shiyao brandished her sword, and Tetragon disappeared without a trace. For the time it took to drink a cup of tea, there was a dead silence in the central fighting arena. Zhu Shiyao put on her bulky glasses and unfolded the power of her stellar divine eyes to the limit. In the audience, people could not help but help Zhu Shiyao find the trace of her opponent like crazy. After no one knew how long, someone carefully asked a question. Could it be that we won? This was, of course, an incredible conjecture. Many people wanted to laugh when they heard it. However, the next moment, that person put forward a piece of evidence that could not be ignored. Because those Dixian people don't look right? People immediately turned their attention to the Dixian people sitting on the rostrum. Sure enough, the Dixian people who came out to watch the battle looked very serious. On the other hand, before this, no matter how great the scene on the arena was, they would remain calm and indifferent, and they would never doubt their master. But now they were hesitant, confused, and even fearful. Thus, the people of the Wanxian League gradually realized that perhaps Tetragon would not come back. Regardless of the reason, according to the rules of the martial arts arena, when one party is unable to respond to the battle for a long period of time, it will be judged as having lost the match. From the time Tetragon left the stage until now, the time before the loss was decided was getting shorter and shorter. As a result, more and more people came to witness this historic scene. The Wanxian League seemed to have finally seen the dawn of victory in the grand competition. This battle. Even though it was an inexplicable victory, it was still a victory. According to Tetragon's words, as long as the Wanxian League could beat her in any field, she would admit defeat on behalf of the Dixian League. However, in the past month, people had become accustomed to seeing the heroes of the Union of 10,000 Immortals being defeated in this arena. Those peerless experts who used to be aloof in the past could not even win a single victory. However, after this battle, people would soon see Tetragon lowering his head. As long as they recalled that scene, many people's blood would boil. Many people couldn't even hold back and cheered loudly in the audience. This kind of emotion quickly spread, so that the audience soon began to sing the theme song about Zhu Shiyao that was composed and performed by the cultivators themselves. In their view, this indifferent and low-key big sister of Lingjian school was cuter than anyone else in the world at this time. However, at this time, Zhu Shiyao's words came from the arena. A sentence that was destined to be recorded in history and remembered by countless people for life. I admit defeat. No one could accurately describe the mood of the millions of people in the audience at that moment. From the hot crater of the volcano to the cold windy snowfield, perhaps it was not even 1/10,000th of the feeling at this time. What did she just say? On the rostrum, the red-robed elder's eyes widened and his hand kept digging in his ear, as if he couldn't believe what he had heard. Zhu Shiyao, who had already won, actually said that she admitted defeat? What was wrong with her? Could it be that Tetragon abandoned the majesty of the emperor and began to use some secret evil method to quietly control Zhu Shiyao's mind so that she would take the initiative to admit defeat? Impossible. With the power of Tetragon he could make Zhu Shiyao collapse with just a breath, so why did he have to do it so sneakily? Zhu Shiyao made her own decision. The 2 supremes beside him were also so shocked that their jaws were almost dislocated. The next moment, one of the supremes from Royal Soldier Sect, who pursued the way of decisive killing, suddenly slapped his chin, making a crisp sound. Then he roared, "Hurry up and contact the elders of Lingjian school. Let them quickly come and discipline their traitorous disciple." However, no matter how fast these supremes reacted, it was still too late. In the arena, Zhu Shiyao seriously put away her glasses and shook her head in frustration. The next moment she took a step and left the central arena. With this step there was no room for turning back. No one knew how many angry sighs were woven into a sea of disappointment in an instant. A few cultivators with bad tempers even charged towards Zhu Shiyao, ready to question her about her intentions. However, before these people arrived, there was finally someone who arrived first. Feng Yin, Taoist master's sword cut through the void and came to the city of immortals from an infinitely distant place and stood next to Zhu Shiyao. When he appeared, those murderous cultivators could not help but stop and no longer dared to approach. It was one thing to question a king pill stage Zhu Shiyao, but it was another thing to question the leader of one of the 5 uniques in the world. Fortunately, this time, Feng Yin didn't seem to intend to protect her too much. Yao, what's going on? Zhu Shiyao looked at Feng Yin with some embarrassment. A moment later, she bit her lip and suddenly thrust her great sun-golden brilliant sword toward Feng Yin. This was undoubtedly a rebellious act, but Feng Yin didn't seem to care. He let the sword light flash in front of him, and then he froze for a moment and sighed helplessly. Zhu Shiyao was not good with words, so it was difficult for her to express her thoughts. However, it did not prevent her from resorting to her sword, extreme sword language. Not only Feng Yin could understand Zhu Shiyao's sword rain, but there were also many cultivators around her who saw the sword light and then understood the words in the sword light. Senior Tetragon's magical power is so great that she has tied my hands and feet without even making a move. I have tried my best to find a chance to win, but I can't even catch a trace of her. My eyes are full of lines of nothingness, I can't see the chance to win, and I can't even make a sword strike to win. In this case, I can only admit defeat. After listening to this explanation, the people present could not even speak. Although there seemed to be thousands of alpacas galloping in their hearts, although there was a constant roar in their hearts. Are you retarded? The other side has run away and left the arena. She's not in the arena at all. Of course, you can't see any trace of her even if you're blind. What's in your head? You can't even understand such a simple truth. However, looking at Zhu Shiyao's delicate and timid posture, who could say anything? Judging from her appearance alone, it was really hard to imagine that she was actually the strongest cultivator among her peers. Even Wang Lu did not have a high chance of winning against her. Of course, at this time, people did not know that Wang Lu had broken through to the nascent soul realm. However, they really understood why Lingjian School continued to train new cultivators after having Zhu Shiyao, until Wang Lu appeared. Because this senior sister was really unreliable. With such an IQ, it was really hard to rest assured that she could do anything. She could not even fight well. If she inherited the position of the head in the future, perhaps Lingjian School would really be destroyed. In silence, Zhu Shiyao frowned and raised the sword in her hand again. Master, did I do something wrong? Feng Yin shook his head with a smile. No, you did nothing wrong. Zhu Shiyao was a little uneasy. I didn't perform well enough, right? No, you did very well. The opponent was the top figure in Dixian, so it's normal for you to lose. Then he turned his head and said to everyone around him, Yao, she did make a low-level mistake in the battle, but maybe because of this she did not make a bigger mistake. This is a victory that we should not touch, Feng Yin said faintly. It's an unfair victory. Of course, very soon someone raised a doubt. But after all, it is still an unquestionable victory. Isn't it too ridiculous to care about the strength of character at this time? Feng Yin said, ridiculous? Do you dare to say that you won with a clear conscience in front of Tetragon? At least she should be convinced of her defeat. Yes, Tetragon is not a sore loser, but it doesn't mean that she's a pedantic fool. When Feng Yin said this, he saw that many people around him had revealed a thoughtful look. However, there were also many people who still didn't understand. Therefore he had to make it clear. This victory can only be given to us by Tetragon, and we can't take the initiative to fight for it. Now that he had said this, unless one was really stupid, one would understand this logic. At this time, a burst of laughter suddenly came. Ha, well said. When Feng Yin heard this voice, he was slightly surprised. Shijojin? The person who came was Shijojin. As he strode forward, the crowd involuntarily opened a spacious passage for him. This was the treatment of a supreme-level cultivator. You're indeed worthy to be the sect leader of Spirit Sword Sect. Without your words, I'm afraid everyone would make a big mistake on impulse today. In the future, we have to cooperate sincerely with the Dixian people. If we lose the most important mutual recognition for a formal victory, how can we fight side by side in the future? Shijojin shook his head as he said that. Then he came to the front of Feng Yin and said with a smile, Feng Yin Taoist Master, this time, I really want to thank your Lingjian School for your help. Feng Yin froze for a moment and then responded with a polite smile. When he was about to open his mouth, he saw a black light flashing in front of him. Almost subconsciously, Feng Yin summoned his stellar sword and blocked the black light before it reached his body. At this time he could not help but be glad that Feng Yin had stellar divine eyes, which could see through this sneak attack in advance. If his reaction was half a second slower, that black light would have stained his body. However, although Feng Yin himself blocked the sneak attack, it was too late to protect the people around him. In an instant, Shi Jiujin had sent a bit of black light into the space between Zhu Shiyao's eyebrows. "Aha, Feng Yin Taoist Master, this is my gift to you. I hope you will like it." Before his voice fell, Shi Jiujin had turned into a cloud of clear shadow and was shattered by Feng Yin's angry lightning sword. Chapter 740. Poisoned? In the whirlpool of stars, Wang Lu was surprised to get this answer. "Yes, I don't feel very good. It seems that I've been poisoned." "Wait a minute, what's with your expression? Is being poisoned that hard to accept?" "It's not syphilis." Wang Lu sighed. "To be honest, I'd rather it's syphilis. What the hell, what am I in your eyes?" "I'm serious," Wang Lu said and grabbed Wang Wu's hand. "This is not a joke. What's your situation now?" Wang Wu was stunned. "Hey, are you serious? You're already so old, yet you're still doing this kind of mushy business? When you were still a child, you didn't do this kind of thing. The more you live, the more you age. What the hell? Hurry up and die for me." Although Wang Lu said so, he didn't put down his hand. Instead, against the other party's resistance, he felt her pulse. "There seems to be no problem? You're not trying to show off with your phantom limb, are you?" Wang Wu sighed. "If even you can feel the problem, I would have already applied for a paid vacation. I really don't feel very good, but it's not serious enough for you to care about me. If there's a problem, I will say it." Considering that Wang Wu was an innovative talent who could create her own method, she shouldn't be mistaken about her physical condition. Not to mention the defense and survivability of non-phase method was unparalleled since ancient times. Perhaps it could really make the ancient strange poison ineffective. However, this was not a trivial matter that could be taken lightly. After sorting out his thoughts, Wang Lu said, "Just now, Tetragon told me one thing and I don't think she's joking." After Wang Lu explained that the strange poison had eroded a large number of Gisaurus, and that the Dixian had suffered a lot, Wang Wu suddenly put on a dignified look. "What the hell? That vicious? Wait, according to what you said, that strange poison is extremely contagious. Aren't you courting death by sticking so close to me?" Wang Lu thought for a moment and said, "Asking such an idiotic question, are you really hoping for a mushy answer? This isn't like you. You've lived for so long and you're still looking forward to this kind of trick? Forget it, wait for me for a while." As Wang Wu spoke, she calmed down and carefully sensed the state of her body once more. After a long while, she judged, "There are indeed some unclean things. They're very strange, but I can still deal with them. However..." "But what?" "I'm the only one who can handle it. I'm afraid the others won't be able to." "What do the others have to do with you?" Wang Lu frowned. With this person's moral character, he wouldn't normally care about the life and death of others. "So, although I don't care very much, for the sake of fighting side by side with him, I will mourn for Shi Jiujin for a moment," Wang Wu said, lowered her head, blinked her eyes and then raised her head again. "The mourning is over." "Wait a minute, did you just say Shi Jiujin?" Wang Lu's thoughts turned quickly. Shi Jiujin should be in the City of Immortals. "You mean that strange poison has spread to the City of Immortals? Damn it, that's the most densely populated area." Thinking of this, Wang Lu immediately urged his Yuanying in his Jade Mansion and flew to the City of Immortals. There was no time to consider that there were many key details hidden in this matter, nor did he have time to consider why the other party chose to release such a big killing weapon at this time. Wang Lu only knew that the earlier he got back to the City of Immortals, the better. Poisoned? In the City of Immortals, Feng Yin Taoist Master frowned, his eyes were bloodshot, and his palms were constantly opening and closing. He looked extremely irritated. Opposite to Feng Yin, a sage-like old man said softly, "Your disciple's symptoms are very strange." Based on this old man's many years of medical experience, the possibility of poisoning is the highest. However, this kind of poison has never been seen before, and its toxicity can't be figured out. Just considering the method used to poison the disciple, I'm afraid this poison will be very fierce. Feng Yin Taoist Master impatiently asked, "Supreme Xianxia's medical skill is the best in the world, is there really no way?" Supreme Xianxia smiled bitterly and said, "How could I dare to be the best in the world? Your sect's Taoist Master Guanhai's excellent use of medicine is an eye-opener for me. This strange poison is so contagious that it should be difficult for everyone present to survive. Fortunately, Taoist Master Guanhai sealed the poison in your disciple's body with a great wall-fire pill, which allowed us, these old bones, to have a peace of mind. And since even Taoist Master Guanhai is helpless, we are even more helpless." At this time, a female cultivator who looked 34 or 35 years old and dressed like a lady also said, Fengyin Taoist Master, I think we might as well do two things at the same time. On the one hand, we will continue to gather more people for consultation. On the other hand, I suggest that the one who started the trouble should be the one who started it, so we should find Shi Jiujin as soon as possible. Supreme Xian Xia had a different opinion. Taoist Master Kai Yin also has a point. Judging from the other party's way of doing things, he planted the poison but is not in a hurry to stimulate it. Obviously there is a follow-up move. But because of this, Fengyin Taoist Master, you should be more careful not to put yourself in danger. Fengyin Taoist Master shook his head with a wry smile. Yao Er's life is uncertain, how can I just sit back and watch? However, just as he was about to get up, a hand landed on his shoulder. Fengyin Taoist Master, I can understand your mentality. If Qianghua encountered this, I would also be anxious. They represent the future of the immortal cultivation world of 9 regions, and they are indeed more important than us. But at the same time, we must realize that the current 9 regions needs us old guys more. Behind us, there are still thousands of Zhu Shiyao and Qianghua. At this moment, only Hichu Daoren could make Fengyin Taoist Master completely calm down. Taoist friend, he too is right. Now is not the time to be emotional. However, Shi Jiujin's whereabouts are unknown, so we can't just sit back and do nothing. If he succeeds again, the consequences will be unimaginable. Supreme Xian Xia said, yes, Taoist Master Guanhai's Great Wall Fire Resistance Pill is limited. Once Shi Jiujin wantonly spreads the strange poison, it will be difficult for us to stop its spread. But what exactly is going on with Shi Jiujin? With his temper, it's hard to imagine that he would do such a thing. At this time, Fengyin Taoist Master gradually recovered his calmness and quickly thought of the situation reported by Yin Xian not long ago. 5th junior sister still couldn't make it in time? However, if the situation has changed, why didn't she report to me as soon as possible? Could it be? Thinking of this, Fengyin Taoist Master was shocked and immediately tried to contact Wang Wu with the Spirit Sword Heavenly Talisman. As a result, can't contact her? Where did that guy go? At this time she actually... Fengyin Taoist Master finally recovered his calm, but in an instant, it began to disappear. At this time, a young man in a red and white uniform appeared beside him with a smile on his face. Uncle Sect Leader, good news? Fengyin sighed. What good news could there be at this time? Moreover, Zhu Shiyao was still in a coma, yet he could still laugh? Yin Xian, this kid, after losing the balance of Shen Yinzi, who represented absolute rationality, he simply became a bit crazy. Shi Jiujin has appeared again. Where? Fengyin grabbed Yin Xian's arm, subconsciously exerted his strength, and with a crack sound, the bone was broken. Yin Xian let out a pleasantly surprised laugh. Haha, thank you, Uncle Sect Leader, I now have one more bone than the average person. Okay, don't pinch it, I'll get down to business. He appeared in B7 area and happened to meet junior sister Lu Li, and then... What? Fengyin's eyes almost popped out. He met Lu Li? Yes, obviously he came prepared, exactly the same as when he dealt with junior sister Zhu Shiyao. Although junior sister Lu Li's reaction is very fast, it's still impossible to guard against it. Right now, she is being jointly rescued by Uncle Lu Xian and Uncle Fang He, so she should be fine in a short time. Hearing that Lu Li was fine for the time being, Fengyin's mood dropped a bit, but it was still extremely complicated. What kind of good news is this? Yin Xian said with a smile, there's one more sample for research. There should be a few Great Wall Fire Resistance pills left by 7th Uncle, so it's not a problem to save their lives for the time being. In this case, it's a good thing to have more samples. You? Fengyin Taoist Master was about to open his mouth when he suddenly saw Yin Xian's body shake and his face change dramatically. In Fengyin's stellar divine eyes, Yin Xian's face actually showed a sign of death. What's the matter with you? Yin Xian said, out of curiosity, I just tried to separate a little poison from junior sister Lu Li's body and personally experienced it. It's really an amazing poison. I'm ashamed of my inferiority. Are you crazy? No, didn't I just say that at this time the more samples the better? I can't play any other role now. As the real big brother hiding behind the scenes, shouldn't I at least do something for the junior sisters? With that, Yin Xian grinned. Don't worry, I've taken the Great Wall Fire Resistance pill in advance, so it's not contagious. Moreover, I've also taken 7 typical antidotes at the same time. What happens in my body next must be of great research value. So, seniors, please don't let my sacrifice down and work hard to study it. With that, Yin Xian closed his eyes and fell to the ground with a thud. Around him, a group of supremes and powerful figures were stunned. At the same time, in a corner of the City of Immortals, a young man who had been sleeping for a long time suddenly opened his eyes. What is this place? The young man looked around. In his hazy sight, he could vaguely see a bright and spacious bedroom. The room was burning with tranquilizing incense. However, the young man's heart was still full of fear. Dead face, where are you? His mind was in chaos, and only that dead face became clearer and clearer. He subconsciously called out, "Dead face, are you still there?" However, his subconscious call was miraculously answered. Yes. Chapter 741. In the whirlpool of stars, two beams of light shuttled back and forth at an extremely fast speed. However, compared with the vast sea of stars, they seemed slow and sluggish. Wang Lu drove rouge tears regardless of the turbulence of his yuanying, and pushed the speed to the limit. After a long period of acceleration, his speed at this time was enough to stun most high-level yuanying stage cultivators. However, for him this was still not enough. At the current speed, it would take at least half a day to get back to the City of Immortals, and half a day was enough for the fallen immortals to give birth. On the other side, the woman who followed closely behind Wang Lu seemed to be in no hurry, revealing a contemplative look. Speaking of which, I have a problem that I haven't been able to figure out. Damn, you're still thinking about life at this time? Wang Lu could not help but be impatient. Wang Wu waved her hand and said, I don't need to think about a tough life. I really think of a question. Why didn't the other party release this highly diffused poison earlier? If it was at the beginning of the grand competition, such as at the opening ceremony, I'm afraid the entire Wanxian League would have been wiped out. But now, after being familiar with the City of Immortals and operating for nearly a year, we would have more or less room to adapt. So what do you think? Wang Wu said, I don't understand, that's why I asked. However, this poison happened to spread shortly after Tetragon's resuscitation, right? Do you doubt Tetragon? Wang Wu said, don't you doubt it? Indeed, in theory at this time, anyone is worthy of suspicion, but as for Tetragon, I will choose to trust her. Oh, Wang Wu smiled in surprise and said, explain to me in depth, where does this trust come from? When did you become so good that you could even subdue Dixian? Wang Lu also deeply admired this woman's psychological quality that she could eat meat anytime and anywhere, so he responded, we've lived together for so many years, don't you know me? Fine, let's trust Tetragon for now. How do you explain the phenomenon of her resuscitation and the spread of the toxin almost simultaneously? Wang Lu said, it's very simple. Think about how she woke up. I've asked Shen Mo and a few others before. Tetragon's resuscitation was an accident. Because all the Dixian were gradually resuscitation after the group of immortal tombs was opened, and the time was roughly the same. What reason does Tetragon have to be out of sync with the others? Aren't you thinking too much? Dixian's revival was an accident in itself, so what if there was some error in the timing? When we first awakened Shen Mo, the resuscitation of her, by Zhe, and the others was not completely synchronized. Wang Lu nodded. That's why it's even stranger. Dixian's resuscitation can have a sequence, but wouldn't the person who woke up first wake up the people later? When we first met Bai Zhe in Heavenly Earth, he came to wake up Shen Mo. However, after the collective resuscitation of Dixian, Tetragon woke up half a year later, and Shen Mo and the others knew nothing about it. It can only mean that they tried to wake up Tetragon but failed. It's also possible that they don't know that Shen Mo is asleep here. But what you said makes sense. So, Tetragon's resuscitation is indeed a bit strange. If coupled with the spread of the strange poison. Do you want to say that someone is manipulating all this behind the scenes? It's hard to say because there's some logic that doesn't make sense. Waking up Tetragon is obviously not good for the spread of the poison. These days she has slaughtered dozens of Gisaurus in the whirlpool of stars, which has greatly inhibited the spread of the poison. Moreover, because she left a clone in the City of Immortals, the other party has not been able to make their move in the City of Immortals. No. Wang Lu looked at the woman in white in front of him. The latter looked innocent, as if she had forgotten the dead red ancestor dragon. In short, Tetragon's resuscitation is obviously not conducive to the spread of the strange poison. It doesn't make sense to say that both of these are intentional by the person behind the scenes. But we might as well assume that the strange poison was not in the hands of the fallen immortals from the beginning. It's likely that it was suppressed by Tetragon, or at least closely related to her. Therefore, if the fallen immortals want to take out the strange poison in the tombs of immortals, they will inevitably wake up Tetragon. Wang Wu said, don't you think there are too many assumptions? So, there's another guess. Waking up Tetragon is for a bigger goal. The spread of the strange poison is just an appetizer. A bigger goal? For example, the bottom secret of the tombs of immortals? Wang Lu said, the problem that makes Tetragon put down the city of immortals without hesitation and go all out to deal with it is mostly that bottom secret. But now there's no time to explore the bottom secret. I'm afraid the city of immortals needs more help. In fact, there were dozens of elders of Heavenly Sage Hall in the city of immortals, which was a shining place. However, Wang Lu had no doubt that he could play a role in the city of immortals. As for Tetragon, now I can only trust her. Back to the original topic, why did Wang Lu choose to trust Tetragon? Because now he could only trust her. Is there still no way? Just now, Supreme Kuchin has also seen it. The best solution is to cut it in half. Cut it in half. How sure is Kuchin? 20% sure that the poison can be completely removed. In other words, in 80% of cases, not only can it not guarantee safety, but even the poison may not be completely removed? Yes. What did Supreme Tianluan say? Based on the current sample, it will take at least 3 years to restore more than 50% of the poison. Then, according to the ratio, it will take at least 300 years to restore the poison perfectly. Don't be anxious, the Sisters of the Earth Spirit Hall will be here soon. They can also be regarded as poison experts, so maybe they can help. Maybe? In Immortal One area of the City of Immortals, many elders of Heavenly Sage Hall surrounded 3 huge white jade coffins. The white jade coffins were covered with hundreds of restrictive spells. There were 3 people lying inside, 1 man and 2 women. They were the 3 successor disciples of Lingjian school who were previously poisoned. Many elders carefully observed through the restrictive spells, deducing the poison and detoxification plan. However, no matter who it was, they all frowned and were at a loss. In fact, it had only been half an hour since Zhu Shiyao was poisoned. However, in a short period of time, no less than 100 cultivators from various sects had visited to discuss the treatment plan. In the end, even the sect leaders of the 5 uniques tried to treat her, but they still failed. At this time, Feng Yin Taoist Master and Supreme Xian Xia were quietly waiting for the arrival of the Earth Spirit Hall sisters in front of the white jade coffins. The 2 sisters had a resounding reputation in the central region. Their poison path was infinitely awe-inspiring, and they were even more arrogant. Even this grand competition could not make them come out. This time, it was Supreme He Tu who sent people to invite them out with heavy gifts. However, at this time, even Supreme He Tu did not dare to hope that the 2 of them could remove the poison in Zhu Shiyao's body. A moment later, 2 purple clouds came. The Poison Path Sisters of the Earth Spirit Hall walked side by side in a dignified manner. After a cup of tea time, the 2 sisters who stood in front of the coffins took 2 steps back with pale faces. Their faces were enshrouded with purple mist, which showed their inner turmoil. The elder sister bit her lip and cupped her hands toward Feng Yin and said, "Sorry, the 2 of us can't do anything about it. The previous deposit will be returned in full." With that, the 2 of them rode the purple clouds and flew away, leaving behind a group of Heavenly Sage Hall elders who sighed at this. The Sisters of the Earth Spirit Hall can't do it, who else should we look for next? The Flood Dragon of the Green Dragon Pool? The poison of that Flood Dragon is fierce, and its body is immune to all kinds of poison. The Flood Dragon's immunity to all kinds of poison depends on the Dragon Pearl. Do you expect it to spit out the Dragon Pearl and give it to us? What's more, if a Dragon Pearl can detoxify the poison, do you think Feng Yin Taoist Master will sit back and watch his 3 successor disciples fall unconscious? Alas, it's indeed the means of the fallen immortal. As soon as they made their move, they made the heroes of the Wanxian League helpless. They are indeed better than Dixian. Do those Dixians still say the same thing? Yes, they said that this poison once made the leader of Dixian helpless only by cutting the weeds and eliminating the roots. But this poison has now spread in the City of Immortals. I don't know how many disciples and elders of the big sects have been unfortunately poisoned. If we want to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots, who can do it? When the situation broke out, our response was timely. Relying on the City of Immortals, we finally controlled the situation. The poison people have been isolated, so it's not out of control yet. But Shizhojin's whereabouts are unknown, and he may appear again at any time. Alas, I don't know what those legendary supervisors of Xingjing sect are doing. Hey, it seems like someone else is coming? At this time they still don't know how to retreat. Do they want to take the opportunity to hype themselves up, or are they really sure? You old thing, you really don't care about what's going on outside your window. The person who came this time is more famous than the previous pair of sisters. She is the only successor of the Desolate Age witchcraft in 9 regions, and she once defeated Little Poison Immortal in poison fighting. I hope she can bring some good news. Another cup of tea time passed. What did Miss Wu say? She said that this poison is not a poison, so ordinary detoxification methods cannot work. And she's just a witch doctor, she doesn't know any more advanced methods. Wait a minute, this poison is not a poison? What does that mean? Supreme Xianxia is also asking, but when Miss A Wu is anxious she can't speak clearly. She often even speaks in local dialect. Alas, finally there's a different idea. I hope it's a good thing. Several elders were discussing in front of the white jade coffins. Suddenly, several middle-aged cultivators came quickly from the outside. Their faces were dignified and even livid as they carried several slightly smaller white jade coffins. Their whole body exuded cold anger. However, at this time, which of the elders present was not knowledgeable? They immediately stopped these people and said, "What are you guys doing?" The middle-aged cultivator who took the lead replied, "We are cultivators from Tiantai Mountain. Our disciples have been poisoned, so we are here to ask for your help." While speaking, a cloud of fire boiled and rolled over. In the middle of the cloud of fire, the red-robed elder looked angry. For Element just made his move again. In Area A3 he killed 2 Yuanying stage cultivators and poisoned 5 successor disciples of Tiantai Mountain. I repelled 4 Element but I couldn't stop him. I let these people come. As for those 5 disciples, we should save them. Seeing that the red-robed elder had spoken, the elders who guarded the white jade coffins nodded and let them put the 5 white jade coffins beside Zhu Shiyao and the others. At this time, at a glance, 8 white jade coffins had begun to take shape. How many more would there be next? Chapter 742. Shijujin. Has it been determined that he can't be saved? Humph, even if he can be saved, so many people have died in his hands. How can this account be settled? Alas, this time the fallen immortals are really ruthless. Shijojin has been innocent all his life, but now he can't protect his integrity. If he knew this, I'm afraid he would jump out and kill himself. The speaker shook his head vigorously and said, "The fallen immortals are indeed terrible. I now understand a little bit that when the golden generation of Lingjian school rose with great momentum, it was almost destroyed by a fallen immortal. It's really not because Lingjian school is incompetent. What happened in Lingjian school that year has been solved. At this time, the fallen immortals have already made their move. What else is there to hide? Moreover, who dares to question Lingjian school now? The survivors of the Great Cataclysm had already become the famous elders of the Heavenly Sword Hall. The several successor disciples are also better than the other. People don't have to worry about anything. What do those Dixian people say? What else can they say? A group of dragons without a leader is like a plate of loose sand. Several reasonable people have tacitly agreed to the result of the grand competition and took the initiative to help. For example, just now, Immortal Luo Shui took the initiative to come forward and try to relieve the toxicity of the poison people. But most people are still watching. If Tetragon doesn't come forward, they don't even have a person who can make a decision. Moreover, I think there are many who want to surrender. Surrender? The fallen immortals haven't even shown up, but they're already scared like this by controlling Shijojin? They even call themselves Dixian people. This kind of backbone is ridiculous. There's no need to laugh at them. They have also fought and faced those terrible monsters. Not everyone can be like the elders of Lingjian school. What's the next arrangement? Let's find Shijojin first. Supreme, he too has communicated with the Dixian people. Now, the net is spread in the city of immortals and we must catch the 4-element himself. Even if we can't catch the person behind the scenes, we can't let him continue to be so arrogant. Now that several veteran Supremes are ready to take action, let's see how long the 4 Xiangs can last. Although Shijojin is strong with the help of so many true monarchs and Dixian, we should be able to deal with him soon. What I'm worried about is what happens next. After dealing with Shijojin, the mastermind behind the scenes would definitely appear. At that time. Alas, I thought I would never see the crisis of the fallen immortal in my life. The biggest opponent of our Wanxian League in the next 100 years should be the revived Dixian. I didn't expect the crisis to come so quickly. Speaking of which, where did Wang Lu go? Right now, in the current situation of the City of Immortals, what we need the most is a guy like him with endless ideas. I'm not surprised at all. In the whirlpool of stars, Wang Lu suddenly stopped moving forward, shook his head and sighed. In front of him, the light of the City of Immortals in the whirlpool of stars had been faintly visible. They could barely reach it in about an hour. However, as expected, there was already someone blocking the way. A black robe dyed as black as ink. It was Black whom he had been searching for a long time. If everything that happened before was regarded as someone's plan, then this part of the plot was simply logical. Tetragon was lured out of the city of immortals with the strange poison of the fallen immortals, and Wang Wu was plotted against by Zhu Qi dragon ancestor. After that, whether it was Tetragon killing Zhu Qi and smashing the trapped Wang Wu, or Wang Wu breaking out of the restriction and breaking Zhu Qi, the result was the same. Tetragon, Wang Wu and Wang Lu were lured away, and the city of immortals was in a mess. Of course, the most important one was Tetragon. She was the one who could really suppress the scene and make the fallen immortals not dare to act rashly. As for Wang Wu, her unpredictable depth was worthy of fear, but in terms of her enthusiasm in doing things, she was not too threatening. Not to mention Wang Lu. He was indeed a genius, but there were so many people in the city of immortals. Was there no one who could come up with an idea? Was he really that inseparable from Wang Lu? On the other hand, however, Wang Lu would not belittle himself. For the fallen immortals, he must be a thorn in their side. If there was no Wang Lu, there would be no grand competition. Without the grand competition, the Wanxian League and Dixian would lose a stage for peaceful dialogue. Later, Black instigated Dixian to kill people in the grand competition. It was also Wang Lu who stopped the killing with killing, and things did not get completely out of control. These things, if it were someone else, would they be able to do it? Not necessarily. However, since it was Wang Lu who did these things for the fallen immortals, they naturally wanted to get rid of him. What's more, a cultivator who could easily break through from the peak of King Pill to Yuanying stage in just over half a year, it was not too much to be on guard against him. And now it was the best time to nip him in the bud. Tetragon could not come out at all, the city of immortals was in a mess, and there was only Wang Wu who was in King Pill stage. If he didn't kill him now, when would he? The only unexpected thing was that Black would actually show up in person. Although it didn't look like the real person, it was not a clone that could be discarded at will. Its strength was probably at the level of Supreme. But this was also good. Saves the trouble. Wang Lu chuckled and said, "Finish it early and go home to rest." Wang Wu go. He was very self-aware. It was a daydream to fight against a Supreme-level opponent in Yuanying stage. The only one who could come in handy was Wang Wu. "Damn it, little Lu, do you think I'm a dog?" Wang Wu scolded Wang Lu for having no conscience, but at the same time she took the rouge tears and laughed. "Ha, immortal sword." Wang Lu curled his lips and thought, "Look at your greedy face." However, when he thought about it carefully, after inheriting my inheritance, this poor bastard cultivated hard for 150 years. Although she had a peerless cultivation base, she was so poor that she broke her branch to make a sword. When she was down and out, she was even forced to fight empty-handed. That iconic emerald green bamboo sword was simply a disgrace to the Lingjian school. Fortunately, although Wang Wu was poor, Wang Lu was rich. There were not many immortal treasures on him because he didn't need them much. However, the immortal equipment in his mustard seed bag was enough to arm 3 to 5 Wang Wu. However, Wang Wu didn't seem to have much interest at this time. Perhaps the immortal sword Rouge Tears made her want nothing more, or perhaps she was facing an unprecedentedly strong enemy, so Wang Wu couldn't spare time to blackmail Wang Lu. "It's time to settle the account in the city of immortals," Wang Wu said with a fierce look on her face. The slender Rouge Tears in her hand suddenly burst out with a heroic red light, which was dazzling. Wang Lu, who was behind her, let out a soft cry of surprise. The sword light of non-phase sword art had always been golden, so this red sword light was really rare. The next moment an even greater surprise followed. Wang Wu let out a deafening roar. The sound wave shook Wang Lu's entire jade mansion, and the colorful light of his Yuanying flickered. And this roar was just a prelude. Rouge Tears was held high above Wang Wu's head, and in an instant, it turned into a mountain. Ouch! Suddenly, a girl in an apricot gown appeared next to Wang Lu and cried out in pain and surprise. Wang Lu glanced at her from the corner of his eyes. It was Autumn Beam. "Wang Wu, what kind of trick are you playing? You used an immortal sword to make a move, but you ejected the sword spirit out?" Wang Lu was extremely surprised, but he also faintly understood her intention. Normally speaking, Rouge Tears, which emphasized lightness and speed, could never be used like this. Pushing a 2-finger-wide immortal sword to hundreds of feet has completely violated the basic principles of Rouge Tears. As the core of the soul, the sword spirit obviously can't cooperate. On the other hand, what kind of move do you want to make with such a big scene? Wang Lu could not help but be more confused. Unlike him, Wang Wu still carried the Great Heart Demon Oath. The restriction that she could not take the initiative to hurt people with a mortal method was effective for her. If she couldn't take the initiative to hurt people, Why did she make a mountain? Did she want to use it as a meteorite and hide in it all the way back to the city of immortals? The next moment the answer was revealed. In front of him, the corner of Wang Wu's mouth evoked a strange smile. Above her head, the hundreds of meters tall mountain trembled slightly. In his line of sight, the loose white robe revealed most of her lotus arm like a jade pillar. One end went up, propping up the towering mountain, and the other end went down, gathering on the woman's round shoulder. As the mountain trembled slightly, the arm drew a beautiful arc from top to bottom. The towering mountain moved with it, drawing a terrifying arc from top to bottom. Above the mountain, the invisible sword Qi, which stretched for an unknown length, tore the entire space from top to bottom. In his ears, there was a harsh twisting and cracking sound. The shadow that blocked the way disappeared in an instant, as if it had never existed. And the aftermath of the sword Qi continued, extending all the way to infinity. The stars in the distance trembled and flickered. From time to time, there were small lights that burst and then dimmed forever. The power of one sword strike silenced the sea of stars. Everything began in silence and ended in silence. One sword breaks the stars. In the silence, such a line of words suddenly flashed in Wang Lu's mind. Wang Wu was not the kind of person who would shout out every move, but this sword strike was too amazing. It crushed everything with absolute power and vividly displayed the beauty of power. As a sword cultivator, it was impossible for Wang Lu not to recognize this sword strike. Perhaps it was still quite inferior to Shen Mo's great immortal technique that could easily divide yin and yang, but this sword strike was really close to the Tao. The scene in front of him was really a bit beyond imagination. How did this guy cultivate for 150 years? But Wang Wu herself didn't care about it. After the sword strike, the rouge tears returned to its slender appearance. Wang Wu threw it back to Wang Lu and then stretched. Phew. Let's go. Wang Lu took the rouge tears and wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say. Since there was nothing to say, then he wouldn't say it. However, at this moment, on the rouge tears, a cloud of black mist rose from the edge of the sword, along the hilt, and suddenly grabbed Wang Lu's wrist. A friendly advertisement. My beautiful little fox fairy, more than 1 million words, friends who are interested can read it. Chapter 743. You really don't let people worry at all. In vain, I worked hard to eliminate the other party's main force, but in the end, you were still plotted against. You're so stupid that I want to sever the master and disciple relationship with you. You slut, your ability to complain first has reached perfection. It's obvious that you, as a lackey, failed to protect me, which led to my unfortunate poisoning, yet you still have the face to scold me? Damn, if I wasn't there, you would have been caught by him long ago. Now your innocence is all thanks to my hard work. Instead of being grateful, you actually dare to accuse me? Innocence? Are you interested in experiencing the taste of your so-called innocence? Good things are for you to enjoy alone, ha? In the whirlpool of stars, the two of them laughed and scolded each other, free and easy. However, from their expressions, there was not a bit of relaxation. Wang Wu tightly squeezed Wang Lu's wrist. Her jade-white hand turned red, and crystal-clear beads of sweat oozed from her forehead. As for Wang Lu, the corner of his mouth slightly curved upward, but his facial muscles had stiffened because of excessive force. His palm, which was tightly held by Wang Wu, turned black, and the black gas continued to penetrate along his arm. After a moment of stalemate, Wang Lu sighed and said, "It's indeed the strange poison of the fallen immortals. After using so many methods, it still can't be stopped. In any case, it's the trump card of the fallen immortals. If it's so easy to stop, what are they doing?" Wang Wu shook her head disapprovingly and said, "Even I can barely suppress this poison in a corner of my body. If it's you, don't even think about it." Wang Lu laughed and scolded, "Damn, what's wrong with me? We both cultivate the non-phase method, and I've also reached Yuanying stage. What qualifications do you, this king pill, have to be so rampant? What's the use?" Wang Wu immediately smiled contemptuously and said, "We're not cultivating the same version of the non-phase method." After that, she sternly said, "Don't take me as a standard, my path is not easy to walk." Wang Lu nodded. "I can see that the innocent girl from back then has fallen to this state. If you say that this path is easy, I don't believe it either." Wang Wu snorted. "Whose responsibility is this?" "It's mine, it's my responsibility, isn't it?" Wang Lu shook his head and suddenly felt that he was starting to overlap more and more with the big senior brother of the golden generation in his memory, but very soon, he felt waves of dizziness, and the poison had begun to spread uncontrollably. At this moment, even Wang Wu let go of his wrist. After a moment of silence, she said, Do you need me to give you a quick death? Wang Lu asked, how do you want me to be happy? F***ck, you're still trying to take advantage of me even when you're about to die? Wang Wu cursed. She then said, look at you, normal methods probably won't work. Why don't we fuse? You know? Wang Lu smiled and said, breaking the star sword is a move that violates the great oath of the heart demon. Perhaps you have endless cards in your hand, but what about the 3-king pill in your body? I'm not blind. After a pause, Wang Lu's face sank slightly. Is Yu still there? Wang Wu was silent for a moment, and then she opened her mouth, but the voice didn't belong to Wang Wu. Thank you for your concern. I'm still here, but this is probably the last time we have a conversation like this. Wang Lu nodded. He was not surprised by this result. He and Yu Jiao of Song didn't have a deep friendship. At this time he couldn't say that he was sentimental or anything. The problem was, did a person who put 3-king pill in her body really have no side effects? Moreover, Yu Jiao of Song and she had been friends for many years. They got along well with each other. It wouldn't be so easy to include him. What side effects are there? It's better than watching you being poisoned to death, right? Wang Lu shook his head and said, not necessarily. Don't look down on me too much. Wang Wu covered her mouth and chuckled. Yes, you're the best. You're immune to poison. This kind of perfunctory attitude was obviously very hurtful. However, before Wang Lu could refute it, a strange and familiar voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Haha, holy light above, this is not poison. At the same time, in the City of Immortals. In Immortal 1 area, the array where the white jade coffins were placed had been operating at full capacity. From time to time, there was a crackling sound in the air and purple-blue electric arcs scurried back and forth, which made people afraid to approach. The original design, which could accommodate 20 white jade coffins, was piled up twice as many. The array could still be maintained without breaking, thanks to the deep foundation of the Elder of Kunlun Immortal Mountain. However, even so, there were still dozens of white jade coffins outside the array that had no place to store them. The faces of the cultivators who carried the coffins were livid, and their angry eyes constantly scanned the array. They wished they could throw out a few of the white jade coffins and replace them with their own coffins. The situation in the City of Immortals deteriorated rapidly, and it was even more serious than expected. Shijojin came and went like a ghost, dealing with Hichu Daoren and dozens of other supremes with ease. Every time he made a move he could cause heavy casualties. What was more frightening was that the spread of the poison was gradually out of control. The most terrible thing about the strange poison of the fallen immortal was its almost evil infectivity. When one person was poisoned, everyone around him was at risk of being infected. Fortunately, this was the City of Immortals, where there were a large number of golden armored soldiers and the forbidden method in the city, which could control the situation in the first place. However, everyone knew that if this continued, the collapse would happen sooner or later. Damn it, those old guys from Heavenly Sage Hall usually have their eyes on the top of their heads. When there are benefits they grab them faster than anyone else. Now that we need them to do things they're just like idiots. Humph, previously in the grand competition, they asked for resources and manpower from each sect, sucking people's blood until they complained. Now the grand competition has inexplicably disappeared, and there's no explanation for it. Moreover, it's clear that they provoked the fallen immortals, but in the end we bear the loss. This Wanxian League is too much of a scam. Yeah, using the resources provided by each sect to set up a poison sealing array, but in the middle are the people from several big sects. Our people have to wait outside. Damn it, I've never seen such a bully. Their people are people and our people are dirt. Outside the array, the noise and even insults were endless. The irritability and anger of many cultivators seemed to be real, which made everyone's heart heavy. At this time, suddenly, there was a flash of light outside the array, and a tall cultivator came out of it, looking tired. The cultivator wore an unusually large robe, and the hood completely covered his face, which made him look a bit mysterious. However, there were many cultivators present, so some people recognized him. He was the elder of Heavenly Sword Hall of Lingjian School, Ao Guanhai, the #1 pharmacist in the Wanxian League. Right now, most of the hundreds of poison cultivators inside and outside the array relied on his medicine to save their lives and isolate the spread of the poison. However, no matter how proficient Ao Guanhai was in medicine, one person's energy was limited. As more and more poison cultivators got poisoned, he gradually couldn't take care of them. Now that he had just dealt with the 40 people inside the array, he already felt that his jade mansion was empty. Perhaps he was unable to use medicine for the people outside the array. He somewhat apologetically shrugged to the people outside, and then swallowed a panacea. He wanted to meditate and squeeze his yuaning to restore his true yuan. However, before he sat down, he heard someone not far away say in a strange tone, "The Wanxian League is full of talents, but they let a Kunlun slave mix in here. Those who are not of our race must have a different heart. Who knows if there's anything in his medicine?" These words were no longer words of criticism, but rather they were words of pure malice. For a time, everyone's face changed. Although the number of people in Lingjian school was sparse, and it was the weakest among the 5 uniques, the 5 uniques were, after all, the 5 uniques, and they could not be bullied and humiliated. However, Ao Guanhai himself didn't care. He just quietly sat cross-legged. He had seen this kind of racist remarks too many times, so he was no longer surprised. However, Ao Guanhai didn't mind, but it didn't mean that other people didn't mind. Humph! A cold snort, like a broken silver bottle, was heard, and then everyone's eyes saw a gorgeous rainbow sweeping across. The next moment, a scream burst out from the crowd. The cultivator with the strange tone just now was stabbed into the air by a sword. A hole was opened in his chest and abdomen, and his blood spilled into the sky. A cultivator with the appearance of a young girl raised her right hand horizontally forward, and 5 colored lines extended from her fingertips, nailing the cultivator who said the strange words in the air, letting the blood from the hole in his chest and abdomen gush out like a waterfall. Then, her eyes swept down and said coldly, "At this critical moment, the Wanxian League should be in the same boat. At this time, those who attack our own people with inexplicable reasons are most likely spies of the enemy. If you meet them, kill without mercy." After saying that, the young girl landed on the ground, her posture like a butterfly among flowers, but combined with the corpse in the air, it made people feel indescribably horrified. "Who is that person?" someone asked in a low voice in private. "Who else can it be? Of course, it's someone from Lingjian School. It's said that it's the youngest 9th elder of Heavenly Sword Hall. I think her name is Hua Yun." "Wait, don't Heavenly Sword Hall always have 10 people? Why is the youngest 9th elder?" Who knows what's going on with the people from Lingjian School? They always do things inexplicably. TSK in public they killed someone just like that. Really overbearing and awe-inspiring. A few of them whispered to each other, but no one dared to speak too much. They were afraid to provoke that beautiful but ruthless god of death again. Being able to shut up a group of grumbling people was, of course, not because of Hua Yun's beauty or ruthlessness, but because the one who was nailed to death in midair was an evil cultivator with deity stage cultivation base. Nowadays, the Wanxian League was very powerful in 9 regions, and it was not easy for evil cultivators to survive. Most of the people who could reach deity stage had a lot of life-saving skills, and their fighting power was often slightly stronger than the cultivators of the same level. As a result, he was nailed to death by a sword. Although he was just a low-level deity stage cultivator, he was still a deity stage cultivator. Sure enough, the rumor that the people from Lingjian School were good at leapfrogging was not groundless. Not to mention that abnormal number 1 king pill in 9 regions, even this unknown little elder also regarded deity stage cultivator as nothing. Realizing this, the people who were full of complaints could only hide their complaints in their bellies forever. If they really fought, Hua Yun alone was enough to give them a headache. Not to mention that Ao Guanhai, who was obviously stronger than her, was beside Hua Yun. Humph, a group of bitches. Hua Yun, who bore a lot of attention, glanced around with disdain, and then sat next to Ao Guanhai. The girl's face quickly put on a smile and very familiarly patted the other's shoulder. "Hey big guy, what are you doing?" Ao Guanhai somewhat helplessly said, "Junior sister, aren't you too ruthless just now?" Hua Yun immediately pouted her mouth and said, "Humph, that group of bitches, if I don't ruthless, how can they remember? Moreover, the one who died was an evil cultivator. I know him, he likes to play with evil treasures like Mother Childine Banner. He should have died long ago." "Ah, junior sister, you're not such a ruthless person, there's no need to force yourself for me. Big guy, you're so long-winded. I helped you but you don't appreciate it. You're so stupid, no wonder you're bullied by 5th senior sister every day." "5th senior sister, it's me, your savior. I'm tired of hearing it." Hua Yun interrupted with dissatisfaction. "How are Yao Er and the others?" "Not very good." Ao Guanhai shook his head and said, "I've done my best, but this poison is very strange. Wu is right, it doesn't look like a real poison. But the specific composition needs to be analyzed in detail." Speaking of which, Yin Shen took the initiative to use himself as a test subject, which actually helped me a lot. "Yin Shen?" Hua Yun somewhat frowned and said, What exactly is that kid thinking? Dead face, what the hell are you thinking? In a hidden corner of the City of Immortals, a teenager let out an angry roar. Small advertisement. Chidian has a ship girl novel, Deep Sea Bright Ship. Everyone don't miss it if you like ship girls. Chapter 744. Shusi had never been as angry as he was now. As a street ranger, he had long been accustomed to being deceived and used by others. How could a person not be stabbed in the river? It wasn't that Shusi couldn't afford to lose. In fact, he had long been numb to it. He was a young man with no background, no talent, and no luck. Most of the time he would take small advantages and then suffer big losses. Sometimes he was robbed by strong gangsters and sometimes he was exploited by some profiteers, but Shusi could always make himself laugh. Because if there was no hope, there would be no disappointment. Shusi would not expect too much. No matter who betrayed or deceived him, it would not hurt his heart. However, at this moment Shusi was in pain. Dead face, did you do all of this on purpose? Before this resuscitation, Shusi didn't have time to think too much. At that time he only knew that Dead Face might be plotted against by Luo Xiao, and he wanted to help him get out of trouble. But after another deep sleep, he suddenly felt that his mind was a lot lighter, and many problems were strung together. For example, forcing himself to seek cooperation with Luo Xiao, was he deliberately sending him to his death? For example, how many secrets were hidden in the Jade Bone technique? For example, right now he could speak directly in his mind. Was this also part of his calculation? In Shu Si's heart, he already had the answer, but he still had to hear the other party's confirmation before he could really believe it. At this moment he couldn't tell what his mood was like. Shu Si even thought, what if Dead Face said that everything was just a coincidence? Would he feel relieved? Would she accept everything seriously and change her mind for peace of mind? Unfortunately, Dead Face didn't give him room to continue to struggle. Yes, I calculated all of this from the beginning, including letting me die. Of course, I considered the possibility of your death, but according to the calculation, you won't really die. But I have become like this. Shu Si roared in his heart, Dead Face, why? Because it's more advantageous. Dead Face explained lightly, now you have gained the initial trust of Luo Xiao, and I have been able to hide my existence. In my expectation, this is the most advantageous situation. The most beneficial? What kind of advantage was this? What do you take me for? Dead Face was silent for a moment, then said, I thought you could understand all this. The opponent is the fallen immortal, it's not easy to win this situation. You're now a nail planted by Luo Xiao's side. When the time comes, you'll be able to turn the tables and make the opponent bleed. If I were to face him head-on, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to do it even if I paid 100 times the price. Shu Si shook his head, but the sorrow in his heart deepened. In fact, he didn't fully understand the layout of Dead Face, but he didn't have to understand it so well. Now that he had fallen into Luo Xiao's hands, he did not die. He had indeed become a nail hidden by his side. The price of burying a mole around the fallen immortal could be imagined. So, from the very beginning, you've treated me as a chess piece? The Dead Face calmly said, yes, from the beginning, you are the best chess piece in my hand. Shu Si's heart was like dead ashes. A moment later, bitterness surged in his heart, and he couldn't even say half a word. However, Dead Face was a bit strange. Do you feel wronged? Strange, why do you feel wronged? Shu Si felt that it was absurd. You have hurt me like this, yet you don't allow me to feel wronged? Before you met me, you were just a precarious mortal in the marketplace. It was I who brought you into the world of immortal cultivation. It was I who taught you to develop Qingfeng Enterprise. It was I who raised you from a penniless pawn to a pivotal business giant. What qualifications do you have to feel wronged? Or do you think it's too much of a loss for you to die young? It's true that you haven't lived in the City of Immortals for a long time, and it's only been a few months since you became a business giant. However, in this short period of time, you have experienced the luxury life that ordinary people can't experience even if they reincarnated 10 times. Your daily consumption is enough for a city ranger to squander for 100 years. The woman you slept with a few days ago is a fairy that ordinary people can't even look up to. In such a life, you should die without regret, let alone you're not dead. When Shu Si heard these words, he felt even colder. Of course, he knew how good Dead Face was to him. Thus, he once vowed in his heart that in the future, even if he had to be a cow or a horse, he would repay his kindness. Even when he was excited, he even thought of breaking his bones to repay his kindness. That's right, a slippery teenager from the marketplace was actually moved by Dead Face to have the idea of dying for his bosom friend. Shu Si had long given his life to Dead Face. However, at this moment he felt the coldness penetrating into his bones and his heart aching. After a long time he asked, "Dead Face, am I just a chess piece to you? From the beginning to the end you're just using me. Don't you have any other thoughts?" Dead Face lightly said, "What do you want me to think?" Shu Si wanted to say something, but he felt that his chest was stuffy and he couldn't say anything. He thought that Dead Face would stiffly say no so that he could let go of the last trace of fluke, but the rhetorical question that was more hurtful than a stiff refusal put him on the verge of collapse. "Yes, that's right. What should I want you to think? I'm just a street swordsman, a prodigal who probably won't live past the age of 20. What can I hope for the famous Xianxi to think about me? For me, the fate of a chess piece is already very good." Shu Si's voice trembled more and more. "Dead Face, don't you have any human feelings? You and I have been together for so long in the city of immortals. Even if you're a cat or a dog, you should have some feelings, right? I always regarded you as mine. How could you?" However, just when Shu Si's feelings were on the verge of collapse, Dead Face suddenly said, "Cats and dogs are not qualified to be my chess pieces. This move is the most important part of my whole plan. If you and I hadn't been together for nearly a year, I would never have believed you." Shu Si found this somewhat funny, but more than that, a strange warmth suddenly surged in his heart. He laughed and said, "According to what you said, being a chess piece is something to be proud of? I'm not good at chess. I only play one game of chess in my life and I only hold one chess piece. So, should I feel lucky to be the only chess piece in your hand? You should indeed feel lucky. For the only chess piece I will do my best." The voice of Dead Face was still so flat, but the resentment in Shu Si's heart had almost disappeared. Yes, Dead Face had always been like this, cold and indifferent. If he expected him to express his feelings like a normal person, wouldn't that be forcing him? Moreover, although Dead Face didn't say it, in fact, he was indeed cultivated by him as a successor. Moreover, as a chess piece he was used by him, but Dead Face himself was not much better. In this game of chess he himself was also a chess piece. Understanding this, there was only one knot left in Shu Si's heart. "You told me these things in advance. If I told you in advance, your performance would not be natural. After all, you've only been a chess piece for less than a year, so I can't trust you." Although Dead Face said that he couldn't trust him, Shu Si felt more at ease after hearing it. It wasn't because he didn't value him. On the contrary, it was because he valued him too much that he couldn't trust him. And this feeling was not bad. "So, Dead Face, what's the situation now? Are you really dead or pretending to be dead? What do you want me to do by placing me next to Luo Xiao?" After recovering his state of mind, Shu Si's questions suddenly increased. But before Dead Face could answer, he heard footsteps coming from the outside. Shu Si immediately calmed down and didn't dare to talk to the voice in his mind. At this time he, who had recovered his cleverness, naturally wanted to not expose the existence of Dead Face. A moment later the door opened and as expected it was Luo Xiao. "It seems that you and this puppet body are getting along well." Luo Xiao showed a somewhat sarcastic smile. "You just woke up and you already know how to cry." Shu Si's heart turned cold. He guessed that when he was emotional just now he probably didn't control his body well. But it was no big deal. After a narrow escape from death, especially when he found out that although he didn't die, his life was worse than death, it was human nature to cry. If Shu Si wasn't anxious to confront Dead Face, perhaps he would have cried first before he had time to think about other things. Therefore, he didn't panic and responded to Luo Xiao with the right attitude. "What do you want to do?" Luo Xiao smiled and said, "What do I want to do? There are too many people in the city of immortals who want to know what I'm doing. I'm afraid half of the elders of Heavenly Sage Hall have gone crazy thinking about this question. Why should I tell you?" However, after a while Luo Xiao opened his mouth and said with a smile, "But since I'm bored, I can say a few words to you. For example, do you want to know who is behind all this?" Shu Si's heart was shocked and he did not deliberately hide this shock. "Isn't it the fallen immortal behind you?" "Fallen immortal?" Luo Xiao smiled disapprovingly and said, "If there are real fallen immortals, how could I be their dog? Any complete fallen immortal can sweep the city of immortals today. Don't worry, it's still early for the real fallen immortal to come." Go. Hearing this, Shu Si's heart jumped and he could not help but swallow his saliva. However, it's not that easy for the fallen immortals to come to 9 regions completely. Right now at most they just stretched out a hand. That's why they need a helper, or a loyal dog. Luo Xiao smiled and pointed to himself, and then reached out to Shu Si. "Shu Si, are you interested in being the dog of the fallen immortal with me?" Chapter 745. Xu Si was stunned by Luo Xiao's invitation. He wanted him to be the dog of the fallen immortals? How could Luo Xiao dare to make such an absurd request? Was there something wrong with his brain? He killed Xianxi and made himself look like neither a human nor a ghost, yet he still had the face to ask him to be a dog with him? Xu Si wished he could untie his belt and pee on his face on the spot. But soon Xu Si realized that he shouldn't refuse too decisively. Because from an objective point of view, there seemed to be no reason for him to refuse. He was born in the marketplace, so he naturally lacked any sense of loyalty and belonging. Selfishness was his nature. If the fallen immortals could offer a high enough price, he had no reason not to be tempted. But could the fallen immortals offer a high price? Of course they could. Even a successor of a supreme like Luo Xiao could resolutely defect. The resources in the hands of the fallen immortals were probably beyond the imagination of the cultivators of 9 regions. So, wouldn't it be easy to bribe Xu Si? In addition, according to common sense, Xu Si should be full of hatred for the Wanxian League. His master, Xianxi, treated him as a chess piece or even an abandoned chess piece and sacrificed him without hesitation. So, according to normal logic at this time he should hate Xianxi and the Wanxian League that he represented. After realizing this, Xu Si did not dare to show a contemptuous or negative expression, for fear of being seen through. He tried to adjust his expression to make himself look vigilant and fearful, which was exactly what a teenage chess piece should do. Xu Si didn't know how good his acting was. In the past, when he was in the marketplace, every time he pretended to be dead, he would be seen through and then beaten up. However, now he was also an immortal cultivator, and his ability to control his body and mind had been greatly enhanced. Maybe he could really hide it? No one knew if Xu Si's luck was off the charts, but Luo Xiao did not notice Xu Si's rapidly changing expression. Instead, he said to himself, "This is the only opportunity. The fallen immortals don't need too many helpers. In their eyes, it's better for all the cultivators in 9 regions to die. Leaving one more is very eye-catching. Right now their strength is not enough, so they need to recruit a few loyal dogs. But their strength is growing fast, and it won't be long before they no longer need any loyal dogs." As Xu Si listened, he kept thinking about what he should do next. Dead Face was probably afraid of Luo Xiao. When the other party was present, he refused to jump out and speak, so he could only rely on himself. He couldn't be too positive because he had no reason to be positive. At the same time, he couldn't resist too much. For example, he might scold Luo Xiao for being an idiot. He might have the strength of character, but he would probably lose his life. As for thinking of a way to trick the other party, that was even more of a joke. Xu Si was indeed a slippery fellow, but Luo Xiao was no pushover either. He was able to climb all the way from the bottom of the Flower Stern sect to Shijiujin's disciple. How could he be fooled? A thought flashed through Xu Si's mind and he had an idea. He decided to be himself. "Why me?" As Xu Si said that, his eyes rolled, showing a bit of a slippery temperament. "What can I, a nobody in Foundation establishment stage, do for the fallen immortals?" Luo Xiao smiled and said, "The fallen immortals don't care whether the people who surrender are strong or weak. In their eyes they are all ants. They also don't care if you are smart or loyal enough, because they have plenty of ways to make you unable to play tricks. The reason for finding you is very simple: convenience." "Convenience?" Luo Xiao said, "Anyway, it's the same for anyone, so why can't I find you?" This reason was really strong. Xu Si didn't believe it, but he couldn't find a reason to refute it, so he had to remain silent. Luo Xiao gradually lost interest and said, "It seems that you are also a boring person." In that case, seeing that Luo Xiao had raised his hand, Xu Si quickly said, "I'm willing, of course I'm willing. Not to mention being a dog for the fallen immortals, I'm willing to be your dog." "Very well." Luo Xiao nodded and said, "Then help me do one thing." "Go ahead. Let's find a way to get rid of Black together." "What?" Xu Si was shocked. "Why do you want to get rid of him?" Luo Xiao smiled and said, "It's very simple, because he is my boss and I don't want to have too many bosses. It's enough for me to be a dog for the fallen immortals, there's no need for another master." When Xu Si heard this, he was even more shocked. It turned out that behind Luo Xiao was Black, the one who was once the leader of Dixian. However, these were not important. The important thing was, what qualification did Luo Xiao, Xu Si, have to challenge Dixian? Since they are both dogs of the fallen immortals, there will not be too much gap between them. Moreover, Black's action is too fast. The mind disorientation powder of the fallen immortals is about to break out in the city of immortals. We must stop him as soon as possible. The more Xu Si listened, the more confused he became. He could barely understand what mind disorientation powder was. It was probably a kind of strange poison that could break out in the city of immortals. However, for the fallen immortals, it was better to poison all the people in the city of immortals. Why was it necessary to stop him? The cunning rabbit is dead, the hound is cooked. Still not good? Still not good. Outside the poison sealing array in Immortal 1 area, several white-haired cultivators looked at each other and sighed. The strange poison of the fallen immortals was extremely powerful. It had been 3 days since the first case of poison broke out. None of the poisoned people had been saved. On the contrary, many of the cultivators who tried to detoxify were accidentally poisoned and had to be sealed in the white jade coffin to wait for death. Yes, wait for death. At this point, any rational person would not think that this strange poison of the fallen immortals could really be solved by existing means. There had been too many people who were defeated by this strange poison. The leaders of the 5 super sects, Immortal Luo Shui, who was good at detoxification in Dixian. Even when these people gathered and brainstormed, they still could not come up with an effective method. At present, the only thing that could be done was to seal them up to prevent the poison from spreading more wildly. And the people lying in the white jade coffin were no different from corpses in the eyes of others. The cultivators who guarded the poison sealing array were equivalent to the corpse guards. The rotation of the corpse guards was very fast. They changed shifts every 2 hours and there were 2 people in each shift. The main reason was that there were previously corpse guards who were inexplicably poisoned. Thus, the effect of the white jade coffin and the poison sealing array began to be questioned. After many consultations and compromises, the shift system was set up. Although the number of poisoned people thus expanded, in theory, there should be no risk of poisoning as long as they stayed for 2 hours. However, of course, not everyone was willing to take on this kind of task. Those who were forcibly sent here would be full of complaints. I say, what's the point of guarding these corpses? It's just looking for bad luck for other people. This white jade coffin and poison sealing array are not reliable at all. Fairy Bai Lu of Xiushui Villa is such a good person, but she was inexplicably poisoned next to the white jade coffin. I think it's better to destroy these coffins as soon as possible. Destroy? It's easy to say, but the ones lying in the middle of the poison sealing array are the 3 true disciples of Lingjian school. If you dare to talk to Feng Yin Taoist master about destroying them, be careful that you don't get chopped by his sword. Tisk, so what if it's Lingjian school? Won't the true disciples of Lingjian school die? Can they resurrect by lying in the white jade coffin? Life and death are decreed by fate. Even if Feng Yin Taoist master chopped me, his disciple won't be able to resurrect. Be reasonable. Be reasonable? Feng Yin Taoist master has a good temper. Maybe he can be reasonable with you. If Wang Lu Jinren comes back, let's see if he'll be willing to be reasonable with you. Wang Lu? What's wrong with Wang Lu? It's just a mere king pill, would I be afraid of him? If I can't beat him, I can run away. Moreover, in this situation even Dixian can't help, so what can he do? If he has the ability to detoxify the poison, I will immediately go to the foot of Spirit Sword Mountain and kneel there for 10 years. Brother, I advise you not to talk too much. It's not that I look down on you, but things related to Taoist Master Wang Lu are often unexpected. You think he can't do it, but he will do it for you. Right now, the situation in the City of Immortals is so urgent, but he still hasn't shown up. I'm afraid that when he comes back, he will turn the world upside down. Damn, if he can really turn the world upside down as soon as he comes back, why didn't he come back earlier? I think he probably won't come back. Shizhou seems to do whatever he wants, but in fact, it's very regular. There are 4 true disciples of Lingjian school, and 3 of them are lying behind us. Why do you think Wang Lu can stay out of it? Believe it or not, when you go to the foot of Spirit Sword Mountain and kneel there, don't say I didn't remind you. You mean, this is not poison? In the whirlpool of stars, Wang Lu unexpectedly asked the voice that suddenly sounded in his mind. But, regardless of whether it's poison or not, why are you here? Because I am always with the holy light. My respected master, I've actually been by your side all these years. You can't have forgotten, right? The voice in his mind was a bit funny and also a bit wronged. Of course, Wang Lu did not forget that if it weren't for Faceless One to glue non-phase method and primal chaos heaven-splitting sword with the holy light, his king pill would not be so easy to perfect. Nowadays, the world knew that Wang Lu used 2 great methods as the foundation for both offense and defense, but they didn't know that his king pill actually contained 3 kinds of great Tao. Non-phase method, primal chaos heaven-splitting sword, and the sea of holy light. It was just that Wang Lu had no interest in the sea of holy light. The existence of the holy light was always a kind of glue, and its sense of existence was not strong. However, after Wang Lu reached Yuanying stage, his colorful Yuanying could perfectly accommodate a variety of great Tao, so the existence of the holy light was somewhat redundant. However, in any case it was also the strongest great Tao in the Western continent, so there was no harm in leaving it alone. Wang Lu was not surprised that Faceless One, the agent of holy light religion in 9 regions, would always be around him. As he said, he was the real source of the holy light in 9 regions. He was just surprised that Faceless One suddenly appeared. All along, Faceless One had perfectly played the role of a small and transparent person, not interfering with Wang Lu. Even if the latter encountered danger, he would turn a deaf ear to it. It was a bit strange for him to jump out at this time. "It's nothing, I just saw something familiar, so I can't help but sigh with emotion," Faceless One said, as if he was deliberately teasing Wang Lu's appetite. However, with the hint of this sentence, Wang Lu could certainly guess the truth. "The thing that makes you feel familiar is nothing more than the holy light. And you said that this strange poison is not poison, is it a kind of holy light? A mental drug? When your holy light religion cultivates fanatics, do you use this kind of thing?" Faceless One laughed in Wang Lu's mind and said, "You're wrong. What we play is a bit more advanced than this." Chapter 746. Alas, I'm getting old and confused. Wang Lu shook his head and secretly scolded himself for losing his former keenness. In fact, he should have thought of it long ago. A highly contagious poison that would make people lose their mind and be controlled by others. Wasn't that a cult? Moreover, in the past, when the Dixian gathered their heroes and developed their power to its peak, they were still powerless against this strange poison. One possibility was that the technical means of the fallen immortals had far exceeded that of 9 regions, so much so that even if the Dixian tried their best, it would still be difficult for them to catch up. However, if there was such a huge technical gap, how did the Sun Booping and the others persist in fighting for so many years without dying out? The second possibility was that the Dixian had mistaken the nature of the poison and really treated it as a poison, which naturally resulted in half the result with twice the effort. Now that he thought about it, the second possibility was most likely the correct answer. The so-called strange poison of the fallen immortals was actually a mental drug, which was a cult. Those who were poisoned were just fooled into believing in a cult. At this time, what was the use of feeding them with elixirs? Of course, the strange poison was equal to a cult. This was just Wang Lu's guess. However, with the evidence of Faceless One, he was confident that this guess would not be wrong. But there is a logical problem here. Wang Wu's voice appeared in Wang Lu's mind in a timely manner. She questioned, "The strange poison of the fallen immortals has a history of at least 10,000 years. The Dixians suffered from it more than 16,000 years ago. And the rise of your holy light religion has only been around for a few thousand years, right?" Faceless One smiled. "It seems that you misunderstood what I mean. I don't mean that this so-called poison is from the Western continent. But there is something in common between the two." Wang Lu explained, "Any religion or belief that goes to the extreme is no different from a poison. The Western continent has holy light religion, but don't we also have all kinds of religions in 9 regions?" Wang Wu smiled and said, "For example, wisdom religion?" Wang Lu sternly said, "Wisdom religion is by no means an ordinary religion. It always represents the advanced productivity of 9 regions. Enough with the nonsense." With a few words, Wang Wu interrupted her disciples' eloquent wisdom sect propaganda and then asked Faceless One, "In short, do you have a way to detoxify it?" Faceless One said, "This is not poison, so it's not a detoxification. Those who fell for it would be like being brainwashed by a cult, involuntarily becoming a loyal believer. This process is irreversible, so it's impossible for them to completely recover. However, there is still room for improvement." "Oh. The process can't be reversed, so how can it be reversed?" Wang Wu was curious. "Wang Wu, you're not smart enough. I've already said it like this and you still don't understand?" Wang Lu laughed. "Since you're playing with a cult, how can you forget what I did in the past?" Wang Wu was stunned for a moment before she understood. When it came to playing with a cult, Wang Lu was indeed an expert. In the past, when the Lingjian school kicked the Immortal Gathering's disciples down the mountain to do experiential learning, Wang Lu's wisdom sect stirred up the entire Blue River region. That matter left a deep impression on her. Because of the wisdom sect matter, she was impeached more than 10 times by Fang He for lax discipline, and her elder's consecrated elder was also deducted for 3 years. Fortunately, at that time, her elder's consecrated elder had already been deducted for more than 10 years, so it didn't matter. In less than a year after Wang Lu went down the mountain, he founded a huge church with hundreds of millions of believers from scratch. The core development model was to accept the ready-made believers of other churches. In simple terms, it was faith conversion. It was very difficult to make those people who were naturally strong-willed and independent to join the church and contribute their faith. However, the ordinary people in the world were ignorant, and they were easily incited. Moreover, they were stubborn. Even with Wang Lu's ability, he couldn't persuade them to be smart. Finally, it led to Wang Lu's determination to develop the wisdom sect. Standing on the basis of other religions, refining more provocative doctrines, building a more reasonable and meticulous management system, coupled with elite talents and the right time, it was only natural for the wisdom sect to soar to the sky. Do you want those poison people to finally believe in your cult? After Wang Wu understood, she wanted to laugh. Wang Lu, this guy was really too bad. Being controlled by the fallen immortals was indeed terrible, but believing in Wang Lu's wisdom sect didn't seem to be any better. It was really like coming out of the dragon pool and then entering the tiger's den. Wang Lu said, I repeat, wisdom sect always represents the most advanced production in 9 regions. Are you confident that you can complete the faith conversion? Wang Lu smiled and said, let's not talk about the past record. Don't forget that the current wisdom sect has gradually merged with Holy Light religion, and Holy Light religion? Faceless One also smiled and said, it's still the same sentence. What we play is more advanced than this? Isn't our goal black? But what are we going to do now? In the city of immortals, Xu Si followed Luo Xiao in a daze and nervously glanced at the street around him. The two of them were walking on the spacious road of Immortal 2 area. At this time, Immortal 2 area was filled with a murderous atmosphere, completely different from the bustling scene in the past. The alert level was stimulated to the highest level of golden armored warriors everywhere, and the patrols formed by the major sects of the Wanxian League appeared from time to time in every corner of the streets and alleys. However, whether it was the golden armored warriors or the Wanxian League patrols, they all turned a blind eye to Luo Xiao and Xu Si. Sometimes, even when Luo Xiao collided with the opposite person, causing the other party to stagger, the other party acted as if nothing had happened. This was, of course, the means of the fallen immortals, which was far superior to the means of the immortal cultivation world of 9 regions. As Luo Xiao said, once one fell and became the dog of the fallen immortals, the benefits were indeed endless. Luo Xiao just fed Xu Si a purple-black spirit pill, and Xu Si felt that the jade mansion in his body rapidly expanded. A large amount of viscous true yuan filled every corner of his body, and then shrank and condensed into a round and clear king pill. Unsurprisingly, Xu Si had already achieved the king pill. As far as he knew, there had never been such a cheap king pill in the world. The step from Shudan to king pill was not only about the accumulation of magical power, but also involved the refinement of the primordial spirit and the integration with the great Tao of heaven and earth. In short, no one could achieve this step in one fell swoop by pure external force. Therefore, the cultivator who achieved the king pill was called a Taoist master. A person with real ability could be called a Taoist master. However, now, this common sense in 9 regions was broken by his own experience. A pill, a king pill, there was such a beautiful thing in the world. Moreover, this king pill was obviously different from the ordinary king pill. It had all kinds of wonderful things. For example, as long as he recited the formula according to the method taught by Luo Xiao, he would become an invisible person and could walk freely in the Wanxian League. However, if one often walked by the river, how could one not wet his shoes? There were so many capable people in the Wanxian League, and the city of immortals was their home ground. What if he was discovered? At least it was always a risk to walk outside. What was the reason for Luo Xiao to take the risk? To find someone? Luo Xiao replied. As he said that, he pinched his fingers and calculated something. With Xu Si's eyesight, he could only see that Luo Xiao's method of deduction was exceptionally brilliant, which had far exceeded his original realm of King Pill. Most likely it was also the benefit of the fallen immortal. He just became Luo Xiao's dog and he was able to obtain the King Pill. Then how much benefit did Luo Xiao himself get? He claimed that after becoming the dog of the fallen immortal, he was not much different from Black Capital. Didn't that mean that he had the magical ability of Dixian? However, if he really had the magical ability of Dixian, why would he have to look for someone so hard? Shijiujin. Shijiujin? Xu Si was surprised again. Because after walking on the streets of Immortal 2 area for a while and listening to the conversations of the people around him, he already knew what role Shijiujin played in the city of immortals. He was the lackey of the fallen immortal that countless people wanted to kill. Why did Luo Xiao want to find him? I'm going to kill him. Kill him? Xu Si was even more puzzled. Isn't he on our side? Why are you looking for trouble with him? Luo Xiao sneered and said, Our side? What a ridiculous idea. I won't be on the same side as anyone but myself. The others are only strangers and enemies. And killing Shi Jiujin is more beneficial to me. If his matter can't be completed, Black Capital has no choice but to do it himself, which is bound to reveal flaws. But, is what Shi Jiujin is doing inconsistent with our interests? With him, I don't think the Wanxian League will last long. Luo Zhao's smile became colder. But what good is it for me if the Wanxian League collapses now? The credit is completely taken up by him, so what will I be in the future? Have you forgotten what I told you before? Of course Xu Si did not forget. When the cunning rabbit dies, the hound is cooked. This was the reason why he secretly planned to kill Black Capital. Now, it was still the same reason why he wanted to kill Shi Jiujin. This Luo Xiao was indeed an expert in betrayal. Now that he had betrayed the fallen immortal camp, he only considered his own interests and abandoned the cause of the fallen immortals. His behavior could be said to be equivalent to betrayal. He did not know if the fallen immortals behind the scenes would directly destroy him after they knew about it. As long as I don't touch the root and can show no less value than Shi Jiujin, the fallen immortals will not kill me. The fallen immortals don't care about the bite between loyal dogs. Luo Xiao said, and his middle finger suddenly trembled. Ah, found it. The next moment he took Xu Si's hand. Xu Si felt his vision blurred and the scene quickly distorted. When it was restored, he was already in the Immortal 5 area. Not far away was the residence of the famous chief planner of the organizing committee in the City of Immortals. However, there was no news from the owner, so it seemed deserted. Then the target of Luo Zhao's trip stood in front of the courtyard. Master, long time no see. Luo Xiao approached with a strange smile. After Shi Jiujin turned his head, he frowned and said, What are you doing here? While speaking, Shi Jiujin had raised his arm, and a dark vortex slowly condensed in his palm. This was the rhythm of the war. Luo Zhao's contribution to Shi Jiujin's transformation from the mainstay of the Wanxian League to the lackey of the fallen immortals was indispensable. And now, although the two sides had the same position, Shi Jiujin, of course, would not trust Luo Xiao because of this. He had been plotted against once, and he could not be plotted against a second time. And in a head-on fight, his foundation was much stronger than that of Luo Xiao, so he would not lose. However, Luo Xiao certainly knew this, so this time he brought a helper. Xu Si, go. The next moment, Xu Si's mind buzzed, and he could not help but pounce on Shi Jiujin. Chapter 747. Master, thank you for letting me win. In the City of Immortals, the battle between the master and disciple ended calmly. It was as if in a flash the outcome of the battle was clear. Luo Zhao's arm penetrated Shi Jiujin's chest and dug out his beating heart. Shi Jiujin's face was devoid of joy and sorrow, but black blood continued to gush out of his mouth. There was a hint of ridicule in his eyes. The next moment, Shi Jiujin fell silently. Luo Xiao chuckled, leaned down and closed Shi Jiujin's round eyes. Master, rest in peace. Xu Si, who witnessed the whole process, was dumbfounded, and his heart was filled with shock. His mind couldn't work at all. As the person involved, Xu Si saw the whole process of the battle clearly. Luo Xiao threw him out like a hidden weapon, and then moved his feet and arrived in front of Shi Jiujin first. His blood-red right hand went straight to the Supreme's heart. Luo Xiao was the first to defect to the enemy, so he got the most benefits. When his right arm stretched out, it was as if the sea of blood from the 9th level of hell was also brought out. Countless wandering souls and malicious spirits flew and roared around his arm, and the power was astonishing. However, Shi Jiujin was fearless. With a wave of his hand, he released a black vortex and absorbed all the surging sea of blood. The remaining power expanded and instantly scattered the blood on Luo Zhao's arm and suppressed him to the point that he couldn't move. However, the next moment Shi Jiujin's eyes turned and looked at Xu Si, who was still flying in the air, and the vortex in his hand could not help but stagnate. This stagnation completely reversed the outcome of the battle. Luo Xiao mercilessly seized the gap and broke away from the suppression of the vortex. The blood on his arm rose again, and he directly dug out Shi Jiujin's heart. Thus the battle ended in a hurry. In Xu Si's view, this result was completely unacceptable because it was illogical, unreasonable, and completely inexplicable. Shi Jiujin clearly had an overwhelming advantage, so why did he make a suicidal mistake at the last moment? He was distracted by Xu Si, but why? What was there to care about? A quick king pill, even if it was used as a hidden weapon, could not hurt him at all, but it will alarm everyone around and lead to the pursuit of the patrol. Luo Xiao is forcibly detonating the Purple King pill in your body. Once it erupts, the entire city of immortals will be shocked. It is not easy for a supreme to reverse the self-exploding process of the Purple King pill with an external force, so Shizhou will hesitate for a moment. In Xu Xi's mind, Xianninzi's voice quietly sounded. Xu Xi was taken aback. Dead face, why did you come out? Of excess Luo Xiao is. I am of it. Xianninzi sneered, because it seems that there is no need to hide. Pill of Qin of as of excess, Luo King of Luo Si, Xiao also of excess of Jin of Master of Qin. Xu Xi asked curiously, what did I hear? Xianninzi said, I heard the key line that he relied on to win. If I remember correctly, Luo Xiao, you just said something to Shizhou at the moment when he revealed a brief flaw, which made him subconsciously give up his resistance so that he could be killed in one fell swoop, right? Luo Xiao snorted. Sure enough, he heard it. I said to him, Master, leave the rest to me. You can go in peace. So he really went in peace and forcibly lengthened the flaw so that I had the chance to kill him. Xu Xi was baffled by his words. Leave the rest to me, you can go in peace. Just because Luo Xiao said so, Shizhou really went in peace? Wasn't that too unreasonable? There is nothing unreasonable because that sentence can make Shizhou realize which side the person in front of him is on. In addition, Shizhou's poisoning may not be thorough, so he is willing to stretch out his neck to be killed, that's all. Xu Xi was stunned for a moment. He didn't understand, but soon he opened his mouth wide and looked at Luo Xiao incredulously. Dead face, you mean? Could it be that this guy is? Before he finished speaking, he saw Luo Xiao's face change. Shut up, the main character is coming back soon. Xianninzi, wait a moment. No need to talk nonsense, I haven't fallen to the point where I need you to command me. As soon as the two people's voices fell, suddenly, a terrifying breath that made people's breathing freeze descended from the sky. Xu Xi involuntarily knelt on the ground, his body trembled, and the black thick liquid in his body kept tumbling as if it was boiling. Xianninzi also temporarily hid in the deepest part of his body. Beside him, Luo Xiao gritted his teeth and stood in place, but there was a constant sound of bones compressing and colliding in his body. Then Xu Xi heard a voice that was not too strange to him. Most people who had lived in the City of Immortals for a long time and watched many matches would not be unfamiliar with this voice. It was the indifferent voice of Dixian in the dark. Why do you want to kill 4 elements? The tone of the voice was flat, and it was impossible to hear the joy or anger of the owner of the voice. However, as the voice fell, the pressure on Xu Xi and Luo Xiao obviously increased. Xu Xi was shocked, and his mind was like a lonely boat in a storm. At this time he remembered what Luo Xiao just said. As long as one became the dog of the fallen immortal, there would not be too much difference between them. What a joke. Kill 4 elements. After a long time, Luo Xiao gathered enough strength and answered, it's because as a chess piece he has a fatal flaw. If he is not eliminated as soon as possible, it will have an irreparable major impact on the plan. The black-clad Dixian was silent for a moment, and then said, you're lying. However, Luo Xiao ignored him and continued to explain, when I was transforming the 4 symbols, either my technique wasn't proficient enough and I made a mistake, or as a perfected lord, he had some kind of unique arrangement that made the transformation ceremony imperfect. In short, he was not completely transformed and still retained a trace of self-consciousness. Therefore, when he carried out the order, it was difficult for him to be perfect, and he would always leave flaws. He clearly had the ability to kill in the City of Immortals, but he was satisfied with guerrilla warfare. Because deep in his heart, he still regarded himself as a humble 9 regions person and refused to kill his own kind. I think this is a crack in the wall which may expand at any time, leading to the collapse of the whole wall. If one day he loses control and exposes our secret, I'm afraid I can't afford the loss. The black-clad Dixian was silent for a moment. You're still lying. Luo Xiao said, in addition, I have another reason to kill 4 elements. I can do what he did, so there's no need to share the credit with others. Masters don't need to keep too many dogs. Black began to be silent again. After a long time he raised his hand. Master, there's no need for self-determined, not well-behaved dogs. As soon as his voice fell, Luo Xiao let out a shrill, ghost-like scream. Luo Xiao, who stood firm under the heavy pressure, curled up on the ground in pain. Every piece of skin on his body was melting, and what flowed out from under the skin was black blood. Fortunately, the melting only lasted for a moment before it was taken back by Black. I'll give you one last chance. Finish the work left by 4 elements and don't waste my time. Luo Xiao gasped violently on the ground. His body trembled involuntarily. However, he still struggled to respond, "I understand." Although his voice was in pain, Xu Si, who was also kneeling on the ground, saw the joy in Luo Xiao's eyes. After an unknown amount of time, Xu Si felt that the pressure on his head gradually dissipated, and then he dared to raise his head. As expected, Black was nowhere to be found. Beside him, Luo Xiao took a long breath. His body was still in a half-melted state, which was too horrible to look at, but Luo Xiao seemed to have won. "We've already won half of the battle," Luo Xiao explained. His voice was blurred because of the melting of his vocal cords. "Black has come back, which proves that he really can't let go of the things here. Next, as long as I force him back at the right time, my task will be completed." Xian Yinzi appeared at the right time and responded, "What is Black doing now?" "I don't know. I only know that he's not in the City of Immortals and he's very important. It seems to involve the fundamental secret of the City of Immortals, and it's related to Tetragon and the others. In that case, as long as I keep disrupting his steps and force him to waste his time in the City of Immortals, I will be able to interfere with him. At that time he will either be killed by Tetragon in his hurry, or he will come back here and be killed by me, who has been lying in ambush for a long time. Of course, it doesn't matter if he insists on not coming back. All the killing moves he has set in the City of Immortals will be nullified." Hearing this, even Xu Si could be sure that this guy seemed to, "Don't get me wrong, I'm not interested in being your companion. I'm the dog of the fallen immortals, that's for sure. Shijojin may not have been transformed perfectly, but I have been transformed perfectly, so my position will never waver." Xu Si frowned. Since he was the dog of the fallen immortals, why did he do something that clearly hindered the interests of the fallen immortals? "I have no intention of hindering the interests of my master, but," Luo Xiao said and showed a horrible but brilliant smile, "dog biting dog is a matter of course." At the same time, in the whirlpool of stars, Wang Lu suddenly stopped moving forward. Behind him, in a place infinitely far away, it seemed that something important had happened. Although it was only a hazy premonition, Wang Lu could not turn a deaf ear to it. However, as soon as Wang Lu stopped, the people behind him who couldn't stop immediately suffered. T. "Wang Lu, did you do that on purpose? It's fine if you stop suddenly, but you also tightened your body and almost turned me into a flat person." Wang Wu covered her nose while denouncing Wang Lu. "I'll let you see the power of the two-way foil." Wang Lu shook his head and told his feelings truthfully. Sure enough, he was ridiculed. "If you need to pee, you can just say it." As a result, before his voice fell, he saw the whirlpool of stars in front of him shattered, and two figures flew out in a hurry. "Wang Lu, please save Tetragon." Wang Lu's eyes narrowed. "Shinemo Baize?" Spirit Sword Mountain Animation PV has been released and is currently waiting for readers to vote enthusiastically in the Tencent Animation PV competition. If you want to see a long animation, then vote hard. Thank you for your support. Chapter 748. Shinemo Baize? What are you doing here? Wang Lu was surprised by the sudden appearance of the two Dixian. At the same time, he secretly put rouge tears behind him and gestured to Wang Wu, signaling her to use the star-breaking sword again to gain the upper hand. Shinemo and Baize were unaware of Wang Lu's malice. They urged eagerly, "Tetragon is trapped in the thunder pool. Please find someone to save her." The next moment, Wang Wu's star-breaking sword reappeared, as if to crush Baize and Shinemo into powder. However, as soon as the sword was launched, a golden seal came toward them like lightning and hit the tip of Rouge Tears' sword. The golden seal dimmed in an instant, and Baize spat out a mouthful of black blood on the spot, falling into Shenmo's arms. The thin sword in Wang Wu's hand also let out a whine, reluctantly withdrawing the gushing sword energy, and also became dim. Wang Wu herself snorted, and her face turned red and white. Both sides made the same choice. Wang Lu frowned and glanced coldly at Shenmo and Baize. The two seemed to have experienced a fierce battle. They were bruised and extremely weak. After the sword attack just now, Baize was completely useless. Only Shenmo still retained a certain amount of combat power, so the next opponent would be her. The last time they parted, she hoped that they could fight side by side when they met again, but now it seemed that it was an extravagant hope. "Shenmo, I didn't expect that even you, with thick eyebrows and big eyes, would betray the revolution." Wang Lu sneered and pulled out a cold long sword from his waist. The sword body was crystal clear, and the hilt was written with the word "Mysterious Frost" in ancient characters. On the immortal path, Wang Lu broke through all the illusions with the Mysterious Frost sword. The sword momentum was fierce and unstoppable, but it was purely a trick. Now he had the cultivation of nascent soul, and a spiritual treasure-level immortal sword was just right. However, as Wang Lu stroked the sword, the mysterious frost sword was covered with a layer of blood, and its power expanded thousands of times, showing an unnatural distortion. This was one of the killing moves that Wang Lu had prepared for himself. He used the cultivation of nascent soul to trigger the self-destruction of the sword, and before the sword completely collapsed, he could launch a sword energy beyond the limit. According to Wang Lu's calculation, combined with the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword, the attack ability could barely touch the bottom line of supreme level. For a Dixian in perfect condition, such an attack was nothing to worry about, but for a seriously injured person, it was quite threatening. Of course, it was really whimsical to think that a sharp weapon could cross the natural moat between Yuanying and Dixian. Therefore, Wang Lu had prepared hundreds, even thousands of sharp weapons. Behind the mysterious frost sword, there were thousands of spiritual treasure-level weapons hidden in the mustard seed bag. That was the divine weapon arsenal collected by the Wanxian League for the grand competition, and Wang Lu got the key to it by virtue of his position. When necessary, he could open this divine weapon arsenal and set off a storm in an extravagant way. At that time, even if he faced Dixian, he could barely fight. "Stop. We are not your enemy," Shenemo said loudly. She looked tired and hurt, and her cloudy eyes reflected the cold light of the mysterious frost sword, which made her look desperate and helpless. "Wang Lu, wake up." Wang Lu turned a deaf ear to her, and the mysterious frost sword in his hand seemed to have ignited a raging fire. However, at this time there was a hand on his shoulder. "Wang Lu, stop for a moment, the situation is a bit wrong." Wang Lu looked back at Wang Wu, waiting for her explanation. "That negation seal just now is not lethal. It's more like breaking the illusion." Wang Wu said, "They just don't trust that we are not real people." "Oh?" Wang Lu raised his eyebrows, his mind turned quickly, and then he reached out and gently brushed the sword from the lower right side up, taking away the fire from the sword with his fingertips. It became crystal clear and cold once more. "What's going on?" Xian Mo finally breathed a sigh of relief. Her body softened and she sat down on the ground. However, in the face of Wang Lu's outstretched hand, she shook her head. "Don't worry about us. Go and save Tetragon. Black has officially made his move. He set up an ambush for Tetragon in Thunder Reservoir. Many of us rushed to rescue him, but we can't compete with him in Thunder Reservoir." "Thunder Reservoir?" Xian Mo reached out her hand and gently touched the void, which then released a broken starlight. "Thunder Reservoir is at the bottom of the group of immortal tombs. Follow this light, it can take you around the cleansing stars sea." Wang Lu didn't rush to take the starlight. "Tell me more." Xian Mo took a long breath and tried to calm down her fragmented mood. "Black, designed to lure Tetragon to Thunder Reservoir alone, which is the most secret place in the group of immortal tombs. Tetragon didn't expect to be ambushed in Thunder Reservoir, so he was caught off guard and seriously injured, and then..." Wang Lu said, "And then she asked you for help?" "No, she didn't ask anyone for help. It's Black. Black took the initiative to disclose the location of Thunder Reservoir, luring us to rescue him, and then broke us one by one. Because Liu Biechen stole the secret of heaven in advance, he vaguely calculated that this trip would be unfavorable, so that we could prepare and escape. But I'm afraid we can't reach the City of Immortals anymore," Xian Mo said and looked up bitterly, letting Wang Lu see a trace of blackness in her throat. "Poison. Both Bai Zhe and I have been poisoned by him. But rest assured, I can barely seal the poison in my body so it won't infect you." Before Xian Mo could finish her words, Wang Lu had already firmly grasped her hand. "You don't touch me." Xian Mo wanted to shake off Wang Lu, but at this time she was so weak that she couldn't even do such a small thing. Her slender wrist was still tightly held. However, the next moment Xian Mo's eyes widened in disbelief, and a look of surprise appeared in her gray pupils. This was because the boundless darkness within her body was disappearing at an astonishing speed, like melting snow. Instead, it was replaced by a sacred and warm light. Xian Mo seemed to be soaked in warm water, and the coldness in her body disappeared. "This is?" Wang Lu smiled and said, "Welcome to the big family of Holy Light." Although Xian Mo didn't understand Holy Light and couldn't think of the principle of Holy Light detoxification, she knew that she had finally gotten rid of the nightmare that had plagued Dixian for countless years. "Wang Lu, thank you, you are really... Xian Mo trembled and opened her mouth. After her cherry lips slightly opened, she was at a loss for words. She had so many things to say but she couldn't say them. However, soon Xian Mo calmed down her agitated mind and said, thank you for saving me, but now Tetragon's matter is more important. She is the most indispensable member of all of us, please. Wang Lu smiled bitterly and said, the poison in your body has now broken out in the City of Immortals, and it seems that I am the only one who can detoxify it. Xianmo was stunned. Wang Lu's words revealed a basic contradiction. Tetragon in Thunderbolt Reservoir needed the internet, but the City of Immortals needed it more. Tetragon was an important member of Dixian, but for Wang Lu he could only be regarded as a very happy friend. However, the City of Immortals was Wang Lu's everything. Wang Lu had the elixir to detoxify the poison. After returning to the City of Immortals, the detoxification matter could be in the bag. However, in Thunderbolt Reservoir, Black had the advantage of time and place. Even the Dixian had successively lost their halberds, so how could Wang Lu, a Yuanying stage cultivator, play a role? One question after another emerged in Xianmo's mind, which made her heart sink. Why do you want to find Wang Lu? Wang Wu asked. Rationally, Wang Lu is not the best candidate in any case. Even if you want to find me, it's better than finding him, right? Going to Thunderbolt Reservoir to rescue Tetragon was indeed the #1 king pill in 9 regions, far more suitable than Wang Lu, a new Yuanying stage cultivator. Is what Tetragon said. Xianmo replied, from the beginning to the end she didn't ask us for help, but she asked us to find Wang Lu. Wang Lu shook his head and scolded with a smile, this guy, it's not enough for her to die alone, does she have to drag me down with her? Never. Xianmo's voice rose a bit, Tetragon would not do such a childish thing. She must have an important reason. Wang Lu, even if you don't trust us, you can at least trust Tetragon. Wang Lu asked, if I don't trust you, who knows if Tetragon is really trapped in Thunderbolt Reservoir, or even if Thunderbolt Reservoir really exists. Perhaps you're a spy sent by Black, then everything before has no value to discuss. Xianmo was tongue-tied. At this moment, if Wang Lu insisted on suspecting her, she really had no way to prove her innocence. I don't doubt you. Wang Lu said, but about rescuing Tetragon? At this time Wang Wu suddenly said, go? What's the reason? Wang Wu thought for a moment and said, there are 2 reasons. The first is based on a simple logic. If the enemy wants us to do it, we should not do it. Just now, on our way back to the City of Immortals, didn't we encounter Black's avatar? Now I think, isn't that sword a bit too easy to deal with? Even a waste like Baizé could block my sword with his immortal treasure when he was seriously injured. Well, the price is that he seems to be dying. But Black's avatar is not even as good as the seriously injured Baizé? Wang Lu pondered and said, do you want to say that Black's interception is actually a trick to make us think that he doesn't want us to go back to the City of Immortals? In fact, if we don't go to the City of Immortals, but to Thunder Reservoir, he would be in big trouble. Of course, this is just my guess. Wang Wu seriously said, and the second reason is that the problem of the City of Immortals is not necessarily related to you. If I don't go, who else can solve the strange poison of the fallen immortals? Wang Wu pointed to herself and said, me? Faceless has already explained the principle of the trick of the fallen immortals. The struggle for power and profit on the level of belief is not an original creation. I happen to know a friend who is good at this. She should be coming to the City of Immortals soon after my call. A friend similar to Yu? Oh, and if you don't trust me alone, you can add another insurance, such as giving me the title of Holy Woman of Holy Light Religion, so that I have the management authority of Holy Light. In short, the problem of the City of Immortals is not necessarily related to you. But on the other side of Thunder Reservoir, Tetragon's target is you, not anyone else. Wang Lu didn't waste too much time to think about this problem. Very well, then, as you said, you go to the City of Immortals. I will go to Thunder Reservoir and then these 2 people here. Xianmo said, I will go to the City of Immortals to call people. There are still too many companions there who are kept in the dark. If they can be mobilized, they will soon be able to solve the dilemma of Thunder Reservoir. Baizé, who was previously seriously injured, struggled to stand up and said, I will go to Thunder Reservoir. I have made a mistake, so I will clean it up myself. Outside the City of Immortals, a female cultivator arrived on a crane. At the city gate, a row of golden-armored soldiers blocked her way. Who are you? Seeing this, the female cultivator smiled sweetly and said, Li Yunhe of the Eastern Border region, entrusted by Taoist Master Nanfei's, came to solve the problem of the City of Immortals. Chapter 749. Immortal Yunhe? In Immortal 1 area, outside the poison sealing array, the red-robed ancestor looked suspiciously at the female cultivator in front of him. If she hadn't claimed to be entrusted by Wang Wu and had the jade bamboo sword as a keepsake, the ancestor would have already suppressed her and interrogated her as a spy. It was too suspicious. She claimed that she was from Zhuqing in the eastern border province. Zhuqing was a famous city in the world and it was a place of great heroes. At least 3 top-ranked sects in the eastern border province had set their headquarters in Zhuqing and its surrounding areas. Although red-robed patriarch wasn't from the eastern border region and was familiar with Zhuqing, he had never heard of such a person in Zhuqing. Of course, in the immortal cultivation world of the 9 regions, there were hidden dragons and crouching tigers, so it was normal for there to be unknown powerhouses. However, when all the heroes in the world were helpless against the strange poison of the fallen immortals, an unknown cultivator came out and said that she had a world-saving medicine. Normal people would think that there was a fraud in it. Whether it's true or not, we'll know once we try. Li Yunhe smiled gently and walked towards a white jade coffin outside the poison sealing array. Sealed in the white jade coffin was the head disciple of the Sky Cloud Martial School, Hong Feng. Because he had been delivered too late, he could not be placed in the poison sealing formation, and the white jade coffin alone could not suppress the spread of the poison. At this moment, Hong Feng's glabella was dark, and his eyeballs were rolling rapidly as if he was about to make a move. This was a sign that the poison was about to break out. Once the poison broke out, it meant that Hong Feng would lose his mind and become a lackey of the fallen immortals. At that time, death would be a gift to him. Beside the coffin, the sect leader and a few elders of the Sky Cloud Martial School were already waiting with serious expressions, preparing to personally send their eldest disciple on his way. As Li Yunhe approached, the few of them revealed complicated and vigilant expressions. They also suspected Li Yunhe's identity, but at this moment she was like a drowning man's straw, leaving them with no other choice. The elders silently gave way. Li Yunhe nodded in acknowledgement and walked to the coffin. She took a deep breath and pressed her palm on the coffin lid. Suddenly, a gentle and loving light flowed out from her fingertips, easily penetrating the coffin lid and shining on Hong Feng's face. Hey, that's the holy light of the Western continent? The city of immortals was indeed a gathering of heroes. Among the people who guarded the poison array, there were experts who participated in the Western Continent War. At a glance, they could see that the light flowing in Li Yunhe's hand was the holy light of the Western continent. The person sighing did not think too much about it, but the elders of the Sky Cloud Martial School seemed to have been triggered, and they subconsciously reached out to Li Yunhe. In the eyes of the people of 9 regions, the things of the Western continent were, after all, somewhat of a heretical cult. How could they not be alarmed when a strange female cultivator suddenly displayed a heretical power? However, the elder who made the move did not notice that although Li Yunhe appeared to be calm, she needed to use all her strength to maintain the holy light. She was completely focused, and if she was disturbed at this time, the consequences would be hard to predict. In the next moment, an emerald green light cut through space and appeared beside Li Yunhe out of thin air. Bah, bah. After 2 crisp sounds, the 2 elders who had subconsciously attacked retracted their arms while enduring the pain. Then, they looked at the woman in white who had suddenly appeared in front of them in bewilderment. Wang Wu. You are, after all, the elders of a prestigious sect. Don't casually make a move on a woman, okay? Especially when the other party is already taken. The elders of the Sky Cloud Martial School still couldn't adapt to this rapid change and subconsciously asked, Who? Wang Wu patted her proud chest. Of course it's me. Besides me, who else is worthy of the Holy Light religion's holy woman? With that, she no longer paid attention to the elders of the Sky Cloud Martial School. Instead, she turned her head and attentively watched Li Yunhe release the holy light. Then, she quietly held Li Yunhe's other hand that was hanging on the side of her body. Not long after, Li Yunhe lifted her hand from the coffin lid and wiped the sweat off her forehead. It's done? Okay. The elders of the Sky Cloud Martial School couldn't wait any longer. They quickly gathered around and were pleasantly surprised to see Hong Feng open his eyes. He was somewhat sleepy and somewhat confused as he murmured, Here, where is this? The next moment, the heavy coffin lid was lifted. In his confusion, Hong Feng was hugged by his master. His master, who had always been strict, unexpectedly trembled at this time. Hong Feng, it's good that you're okay, it's good that you're okay. Soon, the news that Taoist Master Yunhe of the eastern border region could detoxify the strange poison of the fallen immortals spread like an explosion in the city of immortals. However, while people were ecstatic, they didn't notice that those who had been detoxified by the holy light looked at Li Yunhe and Wang Wu with something more than usual. Is this Thunder Reservoir? In the River of Stars, Wang Lu suddenly stopped and was shocked by the spectacle in front of him. Bypassing the River of Stars, he saw hundreds of billions of stars gathered into a pool, which was dazzling. The thunder in the pool was like a snake. Each thunder exploded like a lightning tribulation, which made people's heart tremble. In the face of such a scene, no immortal cultivator would be indifferent. The Thunder Reservoir contained the truth of heaven and earth, as well as the great terror that could destroy heaven and earth. The further one went on the road of immortal cultivation, the more profound the resonance was. That kind of instinctive fear made Wang Lu suddenly stop. However, it only paused for a moment before Wang Lu set off again. It's really a beautiful place. With a sigh of emotion, Wang Lu's eyes showed a trace of appreciation. He then took a deep breath and moved faster and faster. Xianemo followed behind Wang Lu and looked at his back. Suddenly she felt that she couldn't catch up. Not long ago, when Xianemo witnessed the wonder of Thunder Reservoir for the first time, her mind went blank for a full incense stick of time. If Bai Zhe hadn't woken up in time and woken her up, perhaps she would have been shocked for a longer time. However, how long did it take for Wang Lu to regain consciousness? 1 breath, 2 breaths? Moreover, after waking up, his will was so firm that he completely ignored the terrifying aura of Thunder Reservoir and moved forward faster and faster. When Xianemo saw this, she was slightly stunned. Faster and faster? Before this, Wang Lu was already running at full speed. How come he was even faster now? Xianemo pondered for a moment and suddenly understood. Right now, Wang Lu was using the pressure of the Thunder Reservoir to cleanse his immortal heart. He was using the purity of his immortal heart to promote the growth of his nascent soul. This guy he was cultivating while walking. No wonder his speed was getting faster and faster. He had just entered the nascent soul stage, and with his strong foundation, this was the time when his cultivation speed was the fastest. With the help of the Thunder Reservoir, it was as if he was flying by leaps and bounds. As for Xianemo himself, due to his heavy injuries, he couldn't keep up with Wang Lu's pace. At this moment, a hand suddenly appeared in front of Xianemo. Wang Lu didn't turn around. Keep up. Xianemo smiled and pulled Wang Lu's hand. Borrowing his strength, her speed increased by another level. No wonder Tetragon treats you differently. Wang Lu squinted his eyes and asked with a smile. Because I am fast enough? Not long after, Wang Lu and Xianemo walked along a hidden path, avoiding the wild lightning and entering the depths of the Thunder Reservoir. There was another world in the Thunder Reservoir. It was a huge Shura-killing field. Looking around, red rain fell from the sky and the sea of blood was like lava. Wang Lu believed that not long ago, this place was a beautiful secret paradise. From the corner of his eyes, he could still see the celestial mountain towering above the sea of blood. The mountain was lush with trees and there were birds and beasts. However, at this moment, the beautiful scenery of the celestial mountain was washed away by the rain of blood. The trees withered and the beasts died. The celestial mountain had become the netherworld. Below the mountainside, it was soaked in a thick sea of blood. The sea of blood was as deep as hell. From time to time, it would stir and surge with a color as black as ink, as if it was brewing a great terror. Seeing this scene, Xianmo's body trembled slightly. It actually worsened so quickly. Over there. Wang Lu looked in the direction of her finger and saw a purple shadow in the thick ink-like blood clouds. Although the color was dim and the light was weak, Wang Lu would never mistake it for an emperor's purple aura. Tetragon was over there. Alright, we have found the first target. Next is the second target. If there was Tetragon, of course there would be black. Around the purple shadow, there was a bottomless darkness. In the darkness, there was a flash of light from time to time, but it was quickly swallowed by the darkness, like a wave in the sea. Xianemo covered her mouth, her eyes could not help but pour out sadness. The flash in the darkness was Dishen's companions who rushed over after hearing the news. Most of the people who were exiled by Tetragon had come here to fight against black. However, these rare experts who once caused the world to change color with a wave of their hands seemed to be vulnerable in front of black, who had the advantage of time and place. Her companions, on the other hand, were now fighting to the death. The Dixian did not die that easily, but under the darkness, it was nothing more than a deathbed struggle. Black fought many Earth-level deities alone and even suppressed Senior Gem Emperor, but he was still able to do it with ease. Wang Lu and Xianemo only felt a chill, as if they were being targeted by something cruel and powerful. Now I regret not bringing Wang Wu along. Obviously, when Wang Lu and Xianemo saw black, black also saw them. And in the face of such a powerful expert who could destroy the world, the two of them were really insignificant. Whether it was Wang Lu's divine weapon arsenal or Xian Mo that he still held in his hand, or the trump card that he was ready to fight to the death, in the face of this torrential momentum, it was not worth mentioning. However, at this point I can only move forward bravely. Wang Lu exhaled, put on a smile again, and then moved toward the darkness at a faster speed. The aura of the thunderpool could help him cultivate, so of course Black, who was still above the thunderpool, could also do the same. Wang Lu's jade mansion and immortal heart were sharpened, and the light was reflected on his nascent soul. The basic three-colored nascent soul vaguely burst out a fourth kind of light. Of course, at this time, even if he was promoted to 9-colored nascent soul, it was still not enough. But at this time it was also too late to turn around and escape. He could only trust Tetragon's judgment. She repeatedly urged him to come here, so it was not to let him die, right? Wang Lu, Xian Mo's voice sounded in his ears. Tetragon wants to see you, so he must have a plan to turn the tables. Later I will find a way to entangle Black. Even if it is only for a moment, I will definitely fight for an opportunity for you. Good. The next moment Xian Mo suddenly broke out. In one step, he arrived in front of Wang Lu and, like a stream of light, rushed toward Black without hesitation. Chapter 750. Open. Following Xian Mo's earth-shattering roar, a vast amount of immortal spirit gushed out of her body, stirring up the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the lightning pool battlefield, forming a terrifying immortal technique. Open. The name of the immortal technique was only one word, but the power it contained was endless. The gate of opening was opened, the mountain splitting was opened, and the heaven-splitting earth was also opened. Xian Mo's great immortal technique smashed into the endless darkness in front of her, only to see the pitch-black world rolling and tumbling. A thin crack suddenly appeared in the middle. In the crack there was a clear sky and a warm breeze, like heaven in purgatory. Dixin's power could indeed change heaven and earth. Compared to this great immortal technique, even the heavens' punishment lightning seemed to be overshadowed. Black, who had the advantage of time and place, didn't look so invincible anymore. Although the ray of light in the darkness was weak, it was like a spark of fire, igniting endless hope. At the same time, more than 10 rays of light exploded from the place that was wrapped in the darkness. It was Dixian, who was previously swallowed by the darkness, burning her life to respond to the ray of light in the darkness. Wang Lu, hurry! Golden blood gushed out of Xian Mo's 7 orifices. In order to maintain this great immortal technique, she had already overloaded herself. Her celestial body and jade bones were breaking under the backlash. Although the fire of hope in the darkness was burning, her fire of life was constantly weakening. However, at this moment, Wang Lu seemed to be stunned. He just stood there and didn't move. Xian Mo's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. She urged again, hurry! I can't hold on much longer. Before she finished speaking, Wang Lu's expression changed. He stretched out his hand, but his movement was still half a beat too slow. In front of him, the darkness that was split in half suddenly merged together, and the ray of light was instantly extinguished. Above the sky, countless rays of lightning bloomed in the blood clouds, instantly converged into one and shot down. The thick lightning pillar was 1,000 feet in diameter, and it completely swallowed Xian Mo. The lightning pillar only struck for a moment. When the light dissipated, a circular hole with a radius of 10,000 feet appeared in the sea of blood below. It was so deep that the bottom could not be seen. The sea of blood surged and roared, but when it passed by the hollow, it automatically circled around it and didn't come into contact with it. It was as if the space here had already been distorted, and a special passage that didn't allow any external objects to pass was blasted out by the thunderbolt. Putting aside the fact that Xian Mo was like a lamp that had run out of oil, even if he was in perfect condition, it would still be difficult for him to face such power head-on. This was the wrath of the heavens and earth within the pool of lightning, and it wasn't something a single creature could go against. However, Xian Mo did not die. At this time Xian Mo was standing on the top of a barren mountain. He was held in Wang Lu's arms. His whole body was trembling and weak, and faint golden tears of blood flowed down from his eyes. It was Wang Lu who saved her. At the critical moment of life and death, a pitch-black rapier appeared in her place. And Xian Mo herself was transferred into Wang Lu's arms. Wang Lu sacrificed a flying sword with a numinous treasure in exchange for Xian Mo's life. Fortunately, I guessed it, Wang Lu said coldly. He let go of Xian Mo and let her lie on the ground. The top of the barren mountain was washed by the rain of blood, and the ground was covered with blood. Xian Mo's gauze-like celestial robe was soon stained with red and black, but she didn't seem to notice it. She was still lying on the ground with her head buried. I'll give you 5 seconds to adjust. Just now, Wang Lu exchanged the spiritual sword for Xian Mo. This kind of human sword exchange was based on the foundation of the human sword unity. At the critical moment of life and death, the sword spirit of the black sword forcibly resonated with Xian Mo and swapped her out of the range of the thunderbolt, while the sword spirit itself disappeared. At that moment, Xian Mo was indeed saved, but she was also severely injured. Her mind was almost completely destroyed. She could feel the pain and resentment of the sword spirit of the black sword before it died. Unfortunately, there was no more time for her to slowly calm down. She could only use her immortal heart to suppress the throbbing and restore her calmness. Okay, I can do it again later. Wang Lu was silent for a moment, then nodded. Okay, do it again. When Xian Mo attacked for the first time, Wang Lu, with his extraordinary judgment and intuition, guessed that the black was probably luring the snake out of its hole, so he was lucky enough to escape. Then Wang Lu guessed that the black should not be able to prepare another thunderbolt. After the thunderbolt just now, the blood cloud above their heads was obviously much thinner, and there were a lot less lightning snakes swimming in it. However, the situation did not become advantageous because of this. Xian Mo's attack did not succeed, and she was already on the verge of collapse. Golden blood kept gushing out of her 7 orifices, and her flawless skin cracked in large areas. It seemed like she could fall at any time. But Xian Mo did not intend to give up. She took a deep breath and opened her eyes. Her pupils became blood red, and the platinum blood flowing out of her 7 orifices flowed back into her body. The color also changed from gold to dark red. Wang Lu raised his eyebrows. He knew that Xian Mo was no longer risking her life. She was basically risking her life. She was compressing her immortal spirit, converging all the remaining power in her body and compressing it, hoping to release the strongest explosion. That was why the blood that came into contact with the immortal spirit would turn red again, and the blood that she lost would be pulled back into her body by this suction force. But this compression method was built on the basis that there was no return. Immortal spirit, primordial spirit, jade bones, spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Once all of them were mixed together, it would be difficult to separate them. However, if this was not the case, how could the seriously injured and dying Xian Mo use the second great immortal technique? After noticing Xian Mo's movement, Black immediately reacted. Although the thunder snakes in the sky were small and insignificant, they all roared and rushed down from the clouds. In the blood sea, various kinds of demonic beasts and demon spirits jumped out, ready to encircle and annihilate. Seeing this situation, Wang Lu was inwardly moved. He immediately opened the divine weapon arsenal and lined up all the spiritual treasure-level divine weapons beside him. Go! Wang Lu made a sword finger, aimed at the thunder falling from the clouds and shouted. Suddenly, a short sword turned into a flash of light and rushed up, colliding with the falling thunder, and the two disappeared. At the same time, there were another 3 flying swords of fire, respectively facing the 3 demon spirits in the blood sea, and then resolutely self-destructed, evaporating these powerful demon spirits in an instant. The cultivation of nascent soul level was no longer enough to protect oneself on this battlefield, and could only rely on the heavenly weapon arsenal to use extravagant and cruel means to delay. Xian Mo clearly sensed all this, and her heart kept surging with grief. After a brief resonance with the sword spirit of the black sword, she knew very well how painful and desperate it was for these flying swords with spiritual nature to be used as consumables to self-destruct. And as the main messenger Wang Lu, he was not born cold-blooded and cruel, and he must also be under great pressure to use his sword finger to drive the flying swords to die. Therefore she could not waste this precious opportunity. However, just when Xian Mo was about to integrate everything, she was suddenly stopped by Wang Lu. Wait. Xian Mo's eyes widened in disbelief. Are you crazy? This is a terrible price to buy a moment of time, and you actually want to wait? Wait for what? Can't you see that in this battlefield time is more advantageous to the side? Wait. Wang Lu emphasized again, and his voice was a little heavier. Xian Mo resisted the pressure of burning her internal organs and decided to listen to Wang Lu's opinion. It was just that. What are you waiting for? Wang Lu was silent for a moment, and then his voice trembled slightly. I don't know. But I think now it's Black urging us to act. With that, he suddenly stretched out his right hand and propped up a golden non-phase sword defense, which wrapped the 2 of them in it, and then his left hand pointed in another direction. The next moment, The two people inside the sword defense disappeared from the top of the mountain and appeared in another place. It was a place filled with dazzling galaxies, a place that was cold yet hot. Outside the Thunder Reservoir. Fortunately, I was cautious enough to set up a road sign before I came. The so-called road sign was naturally a flying sword that had been arranged in advance. However, before Wang Lu's voice fell, Xian Mo grabbed his collar, stared at him with blood-red eyes and asked, "Wang Lu, what the hell do you want to do?" "It's a simple logic." Wang Lu grasped Xian Mo's wrist and opened his slender hands a little bit so that he could speak clearly. "The more the enemy wants us to do, the more we can't do it. Black's approach seems to be anxiously urging us to launch the second attack, but in theory he has no reason to be anxious. Time is more advantageous to him." Xian Mo calmed down a little, and then I guess he has encountered some trouble and needs to solve the two of us as soon as possible so that he can solve that trouble. In other words, he can't split himself. "So, you want to say now time is on our side?" Xian Mo asked. "These are all your guesses, how sure are you?" "Less than 10%. Wang Lu shook his head, "But at that time the probability of success for the second attack is less than 1%. Xian Mo gritted his teeth and realized that what Wang Lu said was true. At that time, Black could fall thunder from the sky and summon demon spirits from the Sea of Blood, so he didn't know how many cards he had. "So wait a minute, I think the variables will come soon. Black is probably coming soon." In the City of Immortals, Luo Xiao raised his head high. His eyes passed through the thick dome of the City of Immortals as if he could see an infinitely distant place. "Are you sure?" Luo Xiao shook his head and said with a smile, "Mind disorientation powder has been dispelled, and the cards have been revealed. If he still refuses to come back, I will kneel down and call him father. Moreover, for me I don't need to be so sure. With a 10 to 20% chance I can bet on it. Even if things fail, how much loss can I suffer? If I hold the thigh of the fallen immortal, Black can't kill me." After a pause, Luo Xiao said, "But I think he will come back. If mind disorientation powder is dispelled, maybe he can endure it, but if he loses this thing he will die." Shu Si looked at the cyan bottle in Luo Xiao's hand and asked curiously, "What is this thing? Why is it so important?" Luo Xiao threw the bottle over and said, "The root of mind disorientation powder, the vortex of the fallen." Shu Si was startled. In a flurry he almost dropped the bottle to the ground. Chapter 751. Shu Si carefully held the porcelain bottle. He was afraid that the porcelain bottle would be damaged accidentally, which would lead to the failure of the plan. He was even more afraid that the poison in the porcelain bottle would leak out. Although he was now theoretically the lackey of the fallen immortals, it made no difference whether he was poisoned or not. At the same time, Xianxi raised a question, "Are you sure you can lure Black back with this thing? The source of mind disorientation powder is indeed very important, but now the spread of the poison in the City of Immortals has been contained. With Li Yunhe, mind disorientation powder can no longer pose any threat. This move is tantamount to a dead end. Why should Black pay attention to the vortex of the fallen?" "Good question," Luo Xiao said with a smile. "If mind disorientation powder is just a strange poison in the general sense, then Black really doesn't need to care about the source of the poison. However, mind disorientation powder is not a poison but a kind of faith." "Faith?" "Yes, faith. It's just that this kind of faith is very overbearing, and the way of spreading it is quite special." Shu Si was a bit confused, but Xianxi quickly understood. "You mean similar to the mind control of a cult?" "Yes, mind disorientation powder is the sublimation of the cult's bewitchment into something substantial. However, in essence, it is a kind of faith. And since there is faith, there is naturally a totem to be worshipped." Luo Xiao said and pointed to the small bottle in Shu Si's hand. In that small bottle, the fallen immortals stripped out a part of their own existence and used it as a totem to worship and a vortex of the root of the continuous spread of faith. In a sense, it can be regarded as the avatar of the fallen immortals. After a pause, Luo Xiao further explained, "For Black, losing the avatar of the fallen immortals in 9 regions is like the Zen Baldi's losing the golden body of Buddha. To be serious, this is a crime of blasphemy." "Losing a bottle will be convicted of blasphemy?" Shu Si was a bit incredulous. "The fallen immortals are not equal to us. We are like livestock and pets to them. They can kill or cut us in a moment, so don't mention the ridiculous question of why the fallen immortals are so strict with us." Xianxi asked, "But Luo Xiao must have something important to do when he leaves the City of Immortals at this time. If he rashly puts down his work and comes back because of you, Isn't he afraid of being judged by the fallen immortals as dereliction of duty? It's better to have no achievements than to make mistakes. This was a principle that had to be grasped when working under a high-pressure master. No matter how important the task at hand was, if he succeeded, he would only be rewarded by his master. However, if the vortex of the fallen is lost, the fallen immortals will not pay attention to the balance of merits and demerits and pardon your blasphemy. I see. Xianxi sighed, you really have studied the fallen immortals thoroughly? Luo Xiao smiled and said, if I can't see through it and can't grasp my master's thoughts, then I can't be a qualified loyal dog. Alright, I've explained everything that needs to be explained. Next, I need you to cooperate with me to set up a trap that will make Black unable to return. First of all, Xianxi, I need you to play your original role, a sharp nail inserted in the fallen immortal camp. Xianxi roughly guessed Luo Xiao's thoughts at this time. He nodded and said, yes. But Luo Xiao, what you're doing now, is it really just for? Luo Xiao said with a smile, of course, it's just to eradicate competitors so that I can be favored in the future. Xianxi, you're not naive enough to think that I will stand on your side, are you? At the same time, in another infinitely distant corner of the Tomb of Immortals. It's moving. Outside Thunder Reservoir, Wang Lu finally waited for the change that he was looking forward to. A black figure sprang out from the center of Thunder Reservoir, like a black stream of light. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared at the other end of the galaxy. At the same time, Thunder Reservoir, which was releasing energy violently, seemed to have lost its backbone and became a lot more comfortable and restrained. It seems that Black really can't wait. Wang Lu waited outside Thunder Reservoir for a moment to confirm that the opponent was not trying to lure the snake out of the hole, but was really forced to give up Thunder Reservoir by an unexpected event. Only then did he completely take back the divine weapon arsenal. This time he won the bet again. Black did encounter a problem that he had to put down everything to deal with. Therefore, in the Thunder Reservoir battlefield, all his efforts were in vain. Without the source of the storm, the aura of Thunder Reservoir became deep and restrained, no longer fierce and unrestrained. Wang Lu took Shen Mo's hand and entered Thunder Reservoir again. It was still the Sea of Blood, but the Sea of Blood was drying up and the dark clouds were dissipating. Everything began to go on the right track. Without the cover of the endless darkness, all the details of the battlefield could be seen clearly. Wang Lu saw the purple light in the middle of the world at a glance. Although it was dim and in a sorry state, it was not completely extinguished. Tetragon was still alive, so everything was fine. Tetragon was also surrounded by more than 10 Dixian with different appearances. Most of them were old faces such as Xuan Xian and Lu Biechen. Almost all of these Dixian were seriously injured, and their fire of life was about to be extinguished. There were also a few who were held in the arms of others, motionless. Obviously they had died heroically in the battle just now. Wang Lu, you're finally here. Tetragon's voice was very weak, and there was a strong sense of self-mockery in his tone. Being seen by you in such a sorry state, it's really a disgrace to the Emperor. However, I only have myself to blame, so I have nothing to say. Time is limited, so I'll go straight to the point. Wang Lu, there's someone who wants to see you. Upon hearing this, Wang Lu could not help but be surprised, because the words of Senior Gem Emperor vaguely revealed such a message. The status of that person was a bit higher than Senior Gem Emperor. That was why this proud emperor was willing to be a mouthpiece, and thought of a way to get Wang Lu to come over even in times of danger. Tetragon was already the emperor of Dixian, and there was only one person who had a higher status than her. This was a simple deduction, and everyone present was stupid enough to not understand this. Boss is still alive? Sun Booping is not dead? Tetragon ignored the questions of others, and just silently nodded to Wang Lu. He wants to see you, come with me. With that, the purple light flashed and came to Wang Lu's side. Tetragon stretched out his hand to grab Wang Lu's wrist, and then suddenly fell, passing through the blood sea, passing through the earth, and arriving at a place tens of thousands of feet underground. Tetragon's speed was extremely fast, but Wang Lu could still barely make out that along the way, they seemed to have passed through many different areas. Among them there was a frozen earth layer full of cold air, a high-temperature layer with boiling lava, and a lightning layer highly condensed with the power of thunder. It was like a solid line of defense, firmly guarding the secrets of the lowest layer. Finally, under Tetragon's lead, Wang Lu entered a white space. There was a person standing in the middle of the space. His figure was like a drop in the ocean in the infinitely vast space, but that person had an unusually strong sense of existence. Standing there, people's eyes could not help but focus on him, and unknowingly, they lost their attention to the whole world. Sun Buping? It's me. Wang Lu was a bit absent-minded. This legendary Earth Immortal leader was similar to what he had expected, but also different from what he had expected. Sun Buping looked a bit unprepossessing. His facial features and figure were very ordinary, and there were no luxurious clothes on his body. However, his temperament was so unique, as if he was out of place with everything around him, which was very eye-catching. So, the secret at the bottom of the city of immortals that made Tetragon so confused is referring to you? No, I'm just an adjunct. Sun Buping showed a meticulous smile. The real secret is under my feet. Wang Lu looked at the pure white ground under his feet and said, "Is there anything else under here?" To be precise, under your feet above your head. Everything you see is part of this secret. Sun Buping said with a smile, "Ha, it seems that the more I talk, the more I seem to be in a fog. Unfortunately, time is tight, so I may not be able to finish the story," Wang Lu said. "It doesn't matter, I'm all ears." Sun Buping was silent for a moment. "As you can see, I am Sun Buping, the defeated general 16,000 years ago." Tetragon obviously had something to say, but he was stopped by Sun Buping. "A loss is a loss, there's no need to be hypocritical. However, I have never given up the pursuit of victory, even if I am buried in the group of immortal tombs." Upon hearing this, Wang Lu could not help but frown. The establishment of the group of immortal tombs was a sign that after a long struggle, the Dixian finally gave up hope and entrusted everything to the future generations. However, Sun Buping's words were obviously different from the facts. Chapter 752. Sun Buping's words made Wang Lu slightly alert. It wasn't that he was worried that Sun Buping would harm him. If the mighty Dixian really wanted to do anything to him, he would have died a long time ago. Moreover, the two sides had no conflict of interest and were in the same trench. However, it was precisely because of this that he had to be even more vigilant. Sometimes, the existence of a useless teammate was equivalent to 10 enemies. He thought that it was for your own good, but he didn't know that it would cause you to suffer a fate worse than death. The mighty leader of the Dixian camp, a hero with both wisdom and courage, of course wouldn't be a useless teammate, but he might be even worse than a useless teammate. This kind of person would often not ask for others' opinions when doing things. To put it nicely, he was swift and decisive, but to put it bluntly, he was headstrong and self-opinionated. When Wang Lu was a leader, he was a headstrong and self-opinionated person. What he hated the most was being headstrong and self-opinionated. When he was with Tetragon, the difference in their cultivation was like heaven and earth, but he continued to fight for the initiative and forcibly occupied an equal position. However, the peerless Dixian Sun Buping in front of him might not be willing to give him this opportunity. Just as Wang Lu had this thought, his vision blurred. Sun Buping suddenly appeared in front of him and reached out his hand to touch the space between his eyebrows. "Sorry, time is limited, so I can only use this crude method to tell you a story." The next moment, Wang Lu's mind was flooded with a torrent. Damn, he really is a headstrong and self-opinionated person who doesn't listen to others. In a daze, Sun Buping's voice began to ring in Wang Lu's mind. "I was born in a fisherman's family at the foot of Kunlun Immortal Mountain. My family doted on me since I was a child. Although my family was ordinary, I had no worries. When I was 5, a cultivator on Immortal Mountain came to my house on a whim and asked for a Xinjiang fish. That fish was the first fish I caught when I went out to sea with my father. Although I was reluctant, I could not give it to an immortal cultivator. That cultivator saw that I was reluctant and suddenly smiled. Today I had a whim and wanted to eat a Xinjiang fish. I thought it was because I couldn't forget the taste of my childhood. So this fate has landed on you." After that, he brought me up the mountain and accepted me as his disciple. I started my immortal cultivation career in the Kunlun Immortal Mountain. My master is a rogue cultivator. He was born in Kunlun and was once a talented cultivator. However, because he violated the rules of the sect, he was exiled by the sect. But because he has contributed greatly to Kunlun, while he is exiled in name, there is a place for him in the sect. Master is a very interesting person. He taught me how to cultivate, but he also taught me how to be a person. He said that he didn't have any other achievements in his life, but there were 3 things that he was most proud of. First, he liked to meddle in other people's business. As long as he didn't like something, he would take responsibility for it. Secondly, he would never admit defeat. Sometimes he would poke his nose into other people's business and provoke a powerful opponent. If he was no match for them, he would redouble his efforts in cultivation until he could surpass his opponent. He had lost countless battles in his life, but he had never admitted defeat. Thirdly, he was so good at stirring up trouble, but he was still alive. Then I understood why he and I have the fate of master and disciple. Because I was also a busybody, a person who wouldn't admit defeat no matter what. When I was 5 years old, I went fishing with my father. It was because of a trivial matter that I made a bet with the village head's mischievous little tyrant that I could catch a Xinjiang fish. If I really did catch one, then he couldn't use his father's name to bully the weak. If I couldn't do it? I've long forgotten what to do if I can't do it, because in the end, I did it. Like master, I am a nosy person who would never admit defeat. My talent and cultivation is not excellent. My achievements today are largely due to luck, so it's not worth being proud of. After cultivating for more than 1,000 years, what really makes me proud is that I have never turned a blind eye to injustice, never compromised because my strength is inferior. Of course, the main credit belongs to my master. Without him to protect me, I would have died a long time ago because I didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. However, master can protect me for a while, but he can't protect me for a lifetime. In the end, I still provoked a big trouble. I provoked the fallen immortals. The existence of the fallen immortals can be traced back to the Age of Desolation. The corners of the historical books are full of traces of their existence. It's just that people have always regarded them as a group of desperate lunatics who failed to ascend to immortality. Little did they know that their real bodies are the true immortals that are admired by 9 regions. In fact, until today there are still some people who are unwilling to admit this fact. They think that ascending to immortality means ascending to the land of bliss. They refuse to admit that even in the immortal world, there is still the danger of falling. This is a group of opponents that no one wants to provoke. For tens of thousands of years, even the records in the history books are vague. They only know that they occasionally descend to the lower realm, like hunters on a hunting ground, acting unscrupulously in 9 regions and causing endless harm. Fortunately, the frequency of this kind of thing is not high, perhaps only once in hundreds or thousands of years. Unfortunately, this time I encountered it. And I can't stand to see injustice in the world. At that time, I was already one of the few experts in the world. Many people respectfully called me the Earth True Immortal. However, in front of the fallen immortals, I was as vulnerable as a young child. If it weren't for Master who risked his life to save me, I would have died without a burial place at that time. Before Master died, he told me that this matter should be over. No matter what the fallen immortals did, don't be impulsive because no one will come to save me later. But he said it too late. If it was 500 years ago when I was still the son of a fisherman, I would remember it firmly. But I have been trained by him for 500 years, and my unwillingness to admit defeat has long been deep in my bones. So, in the end, I disobeyed Master's order and spared no effort to avenge him. After that, there was a series of battles between Dixian and the fallen immortals. You already know the story. But there's one thing you don't know. After the failure of the war against the fallen immortals, most of the brothers were disheartened. Therefore, according to the original backup plan, they built the city of immortals and pinned their hopes on the future generations. At that time, with the help of Gem, I faked my death to deceive the enemy, intending to give the fallen immortals a surprise. However, after the decisive battle, the fallen immortals were also seriously injured, and the space channel was closed, so they did not choose to pursue. After that, Gem took me into the Tomb of Immortals and said that I had done enough, and it was time to rest. Actually, Gem is right. I did do enough. The fallen immortal who killed Master has been killed by me. The plan of the fallen immortals to invade 9 regions has also been temporarily thwarted. It is no exaggeration to say that I have played the role of the savior of 9 regions once. But I am still unwilling to give up just like that. Although the passage through which the fallen immortals entered 9 regions has been closed, sooner or later it will be reopened. At that time, instead of relying on the future generations, I hope to defeat them with my own hands. This obsession of not admitting defeat made me restless even when I was seriously injured and dying. I have thought countless times about how to defeat those immortals who have already ascended. In the end, there was only one answer I got: foreign objects. With my own strength alone, it is impossible to surpass those true immortals who have passed through the thunder tribulation and ascended. However, true immortals are not omnipotent. Their personal strength is absolutely incomparable to the power of heaven and earth. Even if 9 regions is fragile and small compared to the immortal world, the fallen immortals can't fight with the immortal world. However, we can rely on 9 regions and draw endless power from this land. Of course, I believe you also know that we are not the only ones who can use the power of 9 regions. The fallen immortals also ascended from 9 regions, and their understanding of this land is deeper than ours. The use of some of the power was so profound that it left people dumbfounded. At the beginning of the war, many of my companions thought that they were blessed by the providence of heaven and earth, but as a result, they died tragically. Hearing this, Wang Lu could not help but sigh. In his previous life, Ouyang Shang suffered a big loss in this regard. Although he had the protection of 9 regions, he was forced by a seriously injured fallen immortal to bind his hands and feet. Later, he and the fallen immortal blew themselves up, and their primordial spirit wandered in different worlds for a long time. In fact, it was more or less in order to wash away the too deep imprint of 9 regions. To use a popular metaphor, the fallen immortals were like bureaucrats who were one level higher than them. Wang Lu's solution was to emigrate overseas, change their nationality, and then gain an innate advantage according to the sequence of first-class foreigners and second-class officials. However, there were too many coincidences in this kind of thing, so it was impossible to replicate. And the method that Sun Buping thought of was obviously not this. It's not enough to borrow power directly from 9 regions. However, when I re-examined the group of immortal tombs, I found that this place that contains the boundless world is also a treasure with infinite power. Moreover, no matter how brilliant the fallen immortals are, they can't beat us in this. The biggest advantage of the group of immortal tombs lies in the creation. Whether it's the creation from the void or the real creation, in this special space, the law of creation is greatly enriched. And I am ready to make full use of this to build a divine weapon that can compete with the fallen immortals. This work is very difficult. It took me 10,000 years to build this divine weapon in the group of immortal tombs. It has unimaginably terrifying power. To put it bluntly, this is a supreme divine weapon that is above the rank of immortal treasure. Above the rank of immortal treasure? Upon hearing this, Wang Lu was shocked. Immortal treasure, as the name implied, was the magical treasure used by the true immortals. It was also the highest rating of magical treasures in 9 regions. And if it wanted to be above the immortal treasure, it meant that its magical power must surpass all the magical treasures recorded in the history books of all the ages. Was this really possible? The next moment, the scene in front of Wang Lu changed again. A huge mountain-like white humanoid puppet appeared in front of him. This is the result of my life's work. Although it's an artificial thing, it's stronger than any living person in the world. It just needs a qualified controller. Wang Lu took a closer look and couldn't help but be amazed. The puppet in front of him was more than 3,000 meters tall and initially had the shape of a human. The material was a mysterious metal of unknown composition, which looked unusually strong. The surface of the metal was engraved with all kinds of inscriptions, which made the huge puppet look mysterious and unpredictable. On the chest of the puppet there was a door. Behind the door was a spacious room with a throne inside, which should be the control center of the puppet. And this shape and structure made Wang Lu really couldn't help but think of something that he saw when he was wandering in multiple worlds. Senior Sun Buping, the divine weapon that you rely on to turn the tables is actually Gundam? Chapter 753. What is Gundam? No, it's nothing, please don't mind it. After the initial consternation, Wang Lu quickly realized that the Gundam-like metal puppet he saw was not a dramatic coincidence, but a most reasonable product. What Sun Buping said before was right. If he wanted to make up for the difference in strength between him and the fallen immortal, he had to rely on the power of external objects. However, no matter how sharp the weapon was, it could not cover up the weakness of the user. No matter how sharp the sword was, if it fell into the hands of a child, it would be difficult to say what threat it would pose. If he wanted to leave no flaws, he had to strengthen the user's ability. However, this was tantamount to returning the problem to its origin. If there was a way to make the cultivator's own strength surpass that of the fallen immortal, why would he work so hard to sharpen external objects? And a humanoid puppet was the perfect answer to these two contradictions. However, in this flying immortal world, it was inevitable for Wang Lu to be shocked when he suddenly saw this kind of thing. After thinking about it, Wang Lu put down the surprise in his heart and asked, "Thank you, Senior, for telling me such a long story, but why do you want to tell me this?" Sun Buping's Gundam was indeed powerful, but it was obviously his own car and had nothing to do with outsiders. And this kind of sharp weapon took Sun Buping 10,000 years to build. Obviously, there would not be a second one at present. Moreover, if it was really a supreme immortal treasure, why would there be a second one? So, in short, whether it was the story just now or the Gundam, what did it have to do with Wang Lu? Since you're so powerful, then drive the Gundam to sweep away the fallen immortals. I will remember to cheer for you. Sun Buping smiled and said, "I'm dying." Dying? Wang Lu asked in surprise. The injury from 16,000 years ago hasn't healed yet? Or was it because of Black's plot just now? Sun Buping said, my lifespan is coming to an end. Lifespan is coming to an end? Wang Lu felt that this reason was absurd. How could the dignified leader of the Dixian leave at such a critical moment for such a reason? There are no immortal things in this world. No matter how strong a cultivator is, there has never been an example of someone who can live as long as heaven and earth. My normal lifespan is about 8,000 years, and I have lost more than half of it in many fierce battles with the fallen immortals. Then, in the group of immortal tombs, I exhausted all means to forcibly extend my lifespan. However, when I reached 10,000 years I was like a dried-up oil lamp, and so far I have overdrawn my lifespan for 2,000 years. I also didn't expect that after 10,000 years, the group of immortal tombs has not been opened, and the fallen immortals have never appeared again. But, fortunately, I was able to complete this godly weapon. As Sun Buping spoke, he sighed in amusement. Actually, when I first started to build it, I thought that even if I spent the rest of my life, I would only be able to complete a rough framework at most, and that I would need a fated person in the future to complete it. In the end, it was you who worked so hard until the end. Wang Lu was silent for a while and then asked, then, you finally completed this miraculous product and you're going to leave peacefully? Sun Buping said with a self-deprecating smile, I'm afraid I can't say peaceful. After overdrawing my lifespan for 2,000 years, if there is reincarnation, I'm afraid I would have to reincarnate in the animal path for 10,000 years to pay off this debt. If there is no reincarnation after I die, I would have to suffer thousands of lightning tribulations to be free. But in any case, my time is indeed coming. So, sorry for being a bit long-winded just now. It's okay, it's understandable. Wang Lu said, but, back to the original question, these things. What do they have to do with me? When Sun Buping died of old age, Tetragon would take over. If something happened to Tetragon, there was still Bai Zai, Xianemo, and the entire Wanxian League. Why did he have to go through so much trouble to find me to say such meaningless nonsense? Because I need you to drive it? Me? Wang Lu widened his eyes in disbelief and turned to look at the metal puppet, which was more than 1,000 feet high. Although the big guy had not moved yet, the cold and awe-inspiring presence made people feel a little breathless. Wang Lu had no doubt that even if he fought with all his strength, he would not be able to fight against this guy's little finger. Just from what he saw on the surface, this giant puppet looked clumsy, but its body was made up of countless small basic modules. These basic modules were as big as a fist, while the small ones were as thin as a grain of sand, and each module was engraved with complex and fine inscriptions. Finally, under the powerful control of the central control, a unified structure was maintained. This structure was not too novel, and Wang Lu had learned some basic knowledge in puppetry. The puppet made in this way had extremely comprehensive functions, but the flaw was that the strength of the controller's primordial spirit was extremely high. If he were to drive this thing, his primordial spirit would probably be broken by the surging torrent of signals as soon as it was connected to the control center of this big guy. However, Sun Buping would not joke about this kind of urgent matter. Therefore Wang Lu said, give me a reasonable reason. Sun Buping said, because you have the void spirit root. Void spirit root. Wang Lu closed his eyes. This reason was really strong. One of the biggest characteristics of the Void Spirit Root was that the entrance and exit of the Jade Mansion and the outside world were very wide, almost without any restrictions. When Wang Lu was still in the Qi refining stage, he could cause the tide reaction of the surrounding spiritual energy. Now that his cultivation base had advanced to the Yuanying stage, his access was probably comparable to that of an immortal. However, this meant that this thing has no requirement for the primordial spirit? There is no requirement for the strength of the primordial spirit, but the requirement for the primordial spirit is more demanding. As for the specific situation, you will know after you go up and try it. Very well, then I won't be polite. Wang Lu leaped up to a height of several hundred zhang, entered the central control room of the metal puppet, and sat on the throne in the center of the control room. Just when he was curious about the joystick and other equipment of this big guy, the door of the control room suddenly closed with a bang. From the holes on the four walls of the room, red liquid poured down like a waterfall, and soon filled the entire control room. Wang Lu seemed to understand something, but he was not in a hurry and let the liquid soak him. Before long, the red liquid filled the room. Wang Lu took a deep breath and let the liquid pour into his mouth and lungs. The next moment, Wang Lu felt that his world was fragmented. His field of vision was stretched, and the sound of the liquid rolling in his ears was distorted into strange notes. In a flash, Wang Lu's field of vision appeared a dark red low mound. And the sky above his head suddenly became a lot lower, as if it was within reach. Wang Lu felt somewhat inconceivable. After a moment of hesitation, he tried to raise his hand. Then he saw two palms shining with a metallic luster. Boom! It was as if hundreds of thunderbolts exploded in his mind at the same time, shaking him into a trance. When Wang Lu regained consciousness, he found that he was already outside the body of the puppet. Sun Buping and Tetragon were on either side of him, looking concerned. What was that just now? Wang Lu shook his head, still feeling dizzy. Fortunately, there were no other side effects. Sun Buping explained, that was a rejection reaction caused by a low synchronization rate. Synchronization rate? This puppet isn't a cold and emotionless tool, but a mystical weapon that possesses life. And if you want to control it, you need to synchronize your thoughts with it. When you can reach the point where you can connect with it and communicate with it without any hindrance, it is equivalent to you becoming its incarnation, and you will have unparalleled and powerful strength. And my so-called synchronization rate is a unit to measure the level of synchronization. Wait, this makes me feel very strange. After listening to Sun Buping's explanation, Wang Lu felt his head ache even more. Let's first confirm a few issues. First of all, driving this big guy should be quite risky, right? For example, if the synchronization rate is too low, then there is no need to say anything, but if it is too high. Sun Buping was a little surprised by Wang Lu's question. You actually thought of this step? Amazing. As you guessed, driving it is very risky. The synchronization rate is one of the important factors. If the synchronization rate is too low, you cannot use the puppet's power, but if the synchronization rate is too high, you will be assimilated by it. Because compared to it, you are really too weak. The setting is really... Wang Lu shook his head and asked, the second question, when this puppet was first created, you should have customized it for yourself, right? Sun Buping nodded. Yes, but the plan can't keep up with the changes. Although I completed it, I lost the opportunity to personally drive it. In that case, no matter how I look at it, your wife Tetragon is more suitable. She has been your husband and wife for many years, so she must understand the thinking of the big toy you created better than I do. At the same time, she is very powerful, so it will be difficult for her to be assimilated. Yes, from a steady point of view, she is more suitable than you, Sun Buping said. At the beginning, I did arrange for her to drive it. But the rejection effect is more serious than I expected. She does not have the void spirit root, and as a part of the control center in the control room, she will be bombarded by energy from all directions, so it is inevitable that she will be injured. At the same time, although she and I have become Tao companions, we are familiar with each other. But our temperaments and ideas are very different, so it is difficult to raise the synchronization rate to the highest. And the most important thing is, she has been plotted against by the darkness and has been seriously injured. There is no hope for her to recover for at least a few decades. Hearing this, Wang Lu looked at Tetragon in surprise. Only then did he realize that although she had been putting on a cool and calm posture, her condition was indeed very bad. It was not an exaggeration to say that she was covered in cuts and bruises. One of her arms was seriously burned, and one of her eyes was blind, and blood kept flowing out. Sun Buping said lightly, of course, if you really do not want to drive it, it is okay. Tetragon will persist until the end. Okay. Wang Lu waved his hand. Since we have already said this, you want me to watch a cute lowly girl die? I will drive it. By the way, let me ask you one last question. This big guy, what is its scientific name? Sun Buping said, speaking of which, I have not really considered the problem of naming it. This thing is the result of my life's blood, sweat, and tears, but more importantly, it carries the desire of countless people for victory and happiness. So I am going to name it Evangelion. Enough, change its name now. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.